Chapter 1455. Inside the main tent of the heavily guarded barracks, the atmosphere was very gloomy. Xiao Ran's eyes swept angrily to the generals in front of him who hung their heads in silence. How did you find out the news? There are only a few thousand people on the other side, and they don't give up Xiao Su's main army. Where did your eyes go? The anger was suppressed, but Xiao Ran's raised tone still made everyone shrink back. One of the generals stood up and blamed himself. I really didn't know that they actually disguised themselves as an army of 20,000. Your Highness, please punish me. Is there any use in punishing you? People have already clamored under our eyes. Xiao Su has also disappeared with the main army. Do you think that now is the time to use people so you are fearless? You can't even do such a small thing as keeping an eye on people. What's the use of keeping you? Xiao Ran stared at these people. Why are the people from his mother's family a bunch of trash? Not only are they incompetent, but they are also a hindrance. Yan Shi on the side knew the reason for his anger. The battlefield changed rapidly. Once the traces of the opponent were lost, it would be difficult to guard against. Moreover, the enemy was outnumbered, but someone took advantage of such a big loophole. If word got out, how could His Highness stand in the three armies? How could he establish military prestige? Xiao Su's reputation was already great. Now with this matter, perhaps, Yan Shi thought of the rumors that had been spreading wildly in the Rising Wind army recently. His Highness still didn't know about this. If he knew, he would be even angrier. Go to the torture room to receive 30 canes. The remaining 70 canes will be given when the war stops. Get out. Now I don't want to see you at all. At this time, Xiao Ran's cold voice sounded, and Yan Shi had a bad feeling in his heart. Many of the people present were old generals. Originally, when they heard this young man degrading them so badly, they were already dissatisfied. Now, regardless of the occasion, he actually wanted to punish them. When something happened, his first reaction was not to save the situation, but to punish them. Many people were angry but did not dare to say anything. The enemy was so childish. No wonder the emperor would take action against the King of England at this time. Sure enough, if the upper beam is not straight, the lower beam will be crooked. Although they thought so in their hearts, they still went down sullenly. Yan Shi was Xiao Ran's confidant. After everyone left, he immediately stepped forward to comfort him. Your Highness, although the King of England has tricked us, he only has more than 10,000 people on his side. We don't have to worry about them at all. We only need to send more people to besiege the general who shouted. I think his thousands of people are nothing to be afraid of. After Xiao Ran heard this, his anger subsided a little. He thought about how he had just punished the general because of his emotions. He felt a little regretful in his heart, but he didn't show it on his face. So you mean to say that this highness made a big fuss over nothing? Although the young man in front of him was not yet 20 years old and he had followed him for a long time, Yan Shi still felt that this prince was not as gentle as before. He had become a little moody, and sometimes he could not figure him out. At this time, he carefully said, "This general does not mean that. I just feel that at this juncture, it is not good." Xiao Ran also reacted, but how could he take back what he had said? He did not want to be known as a person who changed his mind constantly. Yan Shi sensed his mood at this time from his silence and immediately said, "In fact, your highness does not have to blame yourself. They were not wronged to be punished. Moreover, 30 beatings is nothing to a military officer. Your highness can rest assured." Xiao Ran thought so his mood improved a little. However, this was not the case. For a civil official, being reprimanded by the king was a loss of face. For a military officer, being punished by his superior was a loss of face. Xiao Ran's impetuousness for a while made many of his generals very dissatisfied. And this dissatisfaction would grow with the passage of time. "Then, your highness, what should we do next?" Yan Shi asked. "Catch the one who shouted and see if we can pry Xiao Su's whereabouts from his mouth." Xiao Ran said sinisterly. Yan Shi thought that this was the only way. Even if we can't pry it out, it doesn't matter. With him around, Xiao Su will not continue to hide. Father Chu sneezed and then rubbed his nose, his heart full of resentment. who was speaking ill of him behind his back. How dare they? General Chu, our trap has been set. A voice sounded from beside his ear. The person who spoke was the young man who had been beside Father Chu. I'm not deaf, why are you shouting so loudly? You scared me to death. Father Chu covered his little heart and glared at him fiercely. The young man felt wronged. I'm just happy. A few thousand of us fooled tens of thousands of them. If this kind of result were to spread, our names would be resounding. Father Chu touched his chin, feeling that he liked to hear these words. Come, little ears, praise us more. The young man's smile froze on his face. He wanted to throw his weapon in anger. He already said that he was not called little ears. His ears were just a little smaller. Now that his brothers had been infected by the general, he felt so wronged. Little ears sighed, but soon he was dancing with joy again. Not only did we successfully attract most of their forces, we even covered the direction of the main army. I heard that they still don't know that Lord and the rest are here. General, the formation you arranged yesterday was amazing. Who didn't like to hear praise? And it was all true. Father Chu was very pleased, his heart rippling, but he put on a serious face and raised his hand to knock little ears. Don't be arrogant in victory, and don't be discouraged in defeat, okay? Don't be cocky just because of a small victory in front of you. Be like me, calm down. Little Ear's mouth twitched. Who was the one who wanted to hear praise just now? Who was it? If you don't stand up, I promise I won't beat you to death. Even though he was mad inside, he still put on an obedient face and replied, Got it. Good that you know. Let's go, their men are almost here. It seems that they can't wait to experience the obstacles I set for them. Father Chu chuckled, then led his men up the mountain. Not long after, the men who were ordered to capture Father Chu appeared at the foot of the mountain. Because the entrance was not big, only 20 to 30 people could enter in a row. When the people in front of them entered the first valley, the soldiers stepped down and pulled on the ropes buried in the ground. The soldiers in front of them were instantly tripped and fell like dominoes. At the same time, a neat row of arrows appeared above the valley and shot at the people below without warning. Those people didn't expect such an unforeseen event at all. They had already lost their heads out of fear long ago. Arrows blotted out the sky and covered the earth. Each and every one of them became a target. After the arrow formation, there were suddenly dozens of boulders as tall as 2 people on the top of the mountain. One after another, they rolled down with great momentum and deafening sound. The people in the valley were either trampled, shot by arrows, or crushed by the boulders. Not long after, Father Chu stood on the battlefield with his men. His gaze swept across the scattered corpses, and he snorted. Get to work. The people behind him immediately went forward and stripped those people of their clothes. At the same time, they searched the battlefield and hid the people well. Little Ears, take off some clean clothes. I'm a germaphobe. Little Ears' feet tilted, and he almost fell into a pit. Chapter 1456. Xiao Su stood at the top of the mountain, facing the night wind with a calm expression. Is there still no news of Ian? Turin had been standing under the tree with his master for almost a night. He thought that his master would not speak until dawn. Water Spirit said that she could not find the whereabouts of the young princess consort. Turin paused, pursed his lips, and comforted him. Master, no news is good news. Look, isn't it the same with the old man? Since 2 days ago, their people and the young princess consort had been unable to contact each other. They suspected that the Sichuan emperor had done something and blocked the communication between the south and the north. Xiao Su's expression did not improve because of Turin's comfort. Instead, it darkened. The emperor had already made his move. The little fellow would not be spared. During this period of time, he had not received any news from her except after she defeated the Lulan army. This made him uneasy, but he believed in the little fellow's ability. With the herd of beasts and the army by her side, they should be safe. Now that one of them was in the north and the other in the south, there was no use worrying. Thus, the Earth Spirit began to report the news it had received today, hoping to divert its master's attention. There's a battle report from the west. They've successfully taken back 2 more cities. Now, the Junlan army is making a final struggle. I think it won't be long before they're completely eliminated. Xiao Su nodded. He always trusted his third brother. Now that his third brother was in command, the Lulan army was not a problem. He could temporarily put the west side aside. Turin continued, Master, I didn't expect the old man to be so powerful. I thought that it was good enough that he could divert the enemy's attention with a few people. I didn't expect that he could cover us so well. When the old man left with the army, I was worried. Now that I look at it, I thought too much. As he spoke, Turin said somewhat indignantly, the old man was exceptionally talented when he was young. If it weren't for the accident, I'm afraid his name would have shaken the world. Now that he has returned to the battlefield, he's like a flood dragon returning to the sea. Xiao ran and the others are nothing in front of him. Xiao Su chuckled. Everything in life has its own reason. Grasp the present. Turin nodded. Master is right. That's what Ian said. All right, let everyone rest for another 2 hours before we begin the operation. We can't let the old man tire himself out. When Xiao Su saw the fireworks in the air, the corners of his mouth curled up and his eyes sparkled. Turin also saw the flashing fireworks. It was the exclusive method of the fierce, valiant cavalry. He was excited. He did not expect the old man to succeed so quickly. He did not dare to delay any longer and immediately turned to pass down the order. The sky before dawn was always incomparably dark. Xiao Su held a faint smile. It had been a long time since he fought such a battle. It made his blood boil. He hoped that before dawn, Xiao Ran would still be able to sit still. When he received the news of the thousands of people suddenly disappearing, Xiao Ran's face was so dark that it could drip water. You mean those people disappeared from the face of the earth? He gritted his teeth and said word by word, his gaze seemingly wanting to pierce through the messenger in front of him. The messenger's shoulders trembled, his head almost touching the ground. Yes, when our people rushed over, there were no traces of the other party. We don't know where they went either. Furthermore, there was a recent autumn rain, and all traces on the ground were wiped away. This general could only send people to search around the valley. Xiao Ran was so angry that he laughed. Good, it's just a few thousand people. You can't even keep an eye on them with tens of thousands of people. You actually let them slip away from under your eyes. What should I say about you? None of the people present dared to make a sound. The place where they were beaten a few days ago was still aching. It was not worth it to hit the muzzle of the gun at this time. Reporting, we've found traces of the King of England's army. They're on Moon Lily Mountain. This loud shout relieved the cold atmosphere at this time. Xiao Ran's face looked a little better, but he still did not dare to be careless. He had suffered a lot in the past few days. He asked, Are you sure it's Xiao Su's group? The messenger immediately nodded. The scouts saw the King of England himself on the mountain, and the number of people is also correct, a total of more than 15,000 people. Only then did Xiao Ran relax. He was most afraid that Xiao Su would quietly hide himself under his nose, and then jump out at some point to bite him. Against a fierce general like Xiao Su, the most fatal thing was to take him by surprise. Although he did not want to admit it, Xiao Ran had to admit that Xiao Su was the opponent he did not dare to underestimate. Now, don't put all your energy on that hooting commander. He's just a smoke bomb released by Xiao Su to attract our attention. Now, gather the majority of the troops and move closer to Moon Lily Mountain, surround them, and don't let them escape. For the time being, hold back your troops and wait for my orders. To catch bandits, first catch the ringleader. As long as Xiao Su was defeated, the others would become a sheet of loose sand, and there would be nothing to fear. After Xiao Ran finished speaking, he called out the names of a few commanders, and had them immediately gather their troops and move out. On the battlefield, time was life. Xiao Ran did not waste any time, and after giving out the orders, he had someone bring over a topographic map of Moon Lily Mountain, and found a few people who were familiar with the place to begin a discussion. This time, he was determined to hit the target with one strike. Xiao Ran split off a portion of his troops to search for Chu Feng's father and his men, but no one would have thought that the target of their pursuit was leisurely brushing past them right under their noses. Chu Feng's father and his men had already successfully infiltrated Xiao Ran's army and were laughably assigned a mission to search for him. When they accepted the mission, everyone was overjoyed. After the other party left, they rested on the spot without any scruples. Chu Feng's father chewed on a piece of grass, his head resting on his arm as he lay on the ground with one leg crossed over the other. His posture was lazy and unrestrained, and he looked up at the floating clouds in the sky, chuckling. The sky is blue, the clouds are white. Little Ear's lackey was serving tea at the side, but when he heard that, he looked up. Where was the blue sky and white clouds? It was clearly cloudy, but the general was right. Yes, yes. You sure know how to talk. Reward. Chu Feng's father took out a stone from his pocket and threw it to him. Little Ear's mouth twitched. Didn't the general just pick it up from the ground? However, he did not fuss over it, and after keeping it, he asked, General, what do we plan to do next? Chu Feng's father raised a finger mysteriously. One word, the. It was clearly 2 words. Wait for what? Little Ear asked humbly. Chu Feng's father rolled his eyes. Why was this kid so stupid? Forget it, he had better be kind and explain. Although Xiao Ran has been lured away by his son-in-law, he still left some men to keep an eye on Wu Lin's men, so we have to wait for the right time to sneak in and contact Wu Lin. Little Ear came to a sudden realization. Because they were in the search party and not the main attacking party, they had to wait for the right opportunity to strike. Little Ear, you're even stupider than Hollow. But at least he has the beauty now. I can only say that fortune favors fools. Little Ear, who did I offend? Where did this Hollow come from? Ethereal suddenly sneezed and rubbed his nose. Who is talking bad about him? Chapter 1457. It was supposed to be daytime, but now it was as dark as night. Chu Qingyan raised her head and looked at the raindrops falling continuously. Her brows were slightly furrowed. This rain has been going on for 2 days. I don't know when it will end. Ethereal's voice came from behind her. She sighed softly. That's right. The weather changed so quickly that they were caught off guard. If it wasn't for the fact that they happened to be at the bottom of the valley and had this natural mountain wall to block the rain, they might have been drenched. It was normal to travel on a rainy day, but she was not only leading the fierce army, but also a large group of beast soldiers. Needless to say, the eagle army couldn't fly at all in the rain. Although the beasts were fierce, they didn't like to go out in the rain. Moreover, they were dispirited and didn't have much energy. So she thought about it and let everyone rest where they were. And there was a voice in her heart that kept whispering to her, don't get wet, you'll get sick. The voice came out of nowhere, but she somehow managed to hear it. It was only later that she found out that this was the telepathy between mother and son, but this was a story for another time. It was also because of this heavy rain that their communication with the outside world was cut off. Until today, she didn't know what was going on with the big ice cube. Young princess consort, don't worry. Master will definitely be safe and sound. Ethereal seemed to see her worry and couldn't help but smile and comfort her. Hearing the unreserved trust of the person beside her, Chu Qingyan couldn't help but reveal a proud expression. The big ice cube had this ability to make his subordinates trust him so much. This was also an affirmation of his powerful ability. Her bright eyes rippled with a smile. Then she said, Jean Exin, do you still have that sour fruit to eat? Ethereal almost sprained his waist. Young princess consort, you seem to be particularly fond of sour fruits recently. Chu Qingyan, who was taking the fruit that Jean Exin handed over, revealed a very innocent expression when she heard this. I can't help it. I'm greedy. Ethereal rubbed his chin. Something was wrong with the little princess. Jean Exin, who was at the side, glanced at the remaining few small sour fruits in the bag. According to the fact that his master ate more than 10 fruits a day, he decided to pluck the fruits from those few fruit trees. And he would call a helper to help him. Thus, he silently turned around and called for Bai Yutang and went to pluck the fruits. Hualing looked at the little princess eating a little sour fruit and couldn't help swallowing a mouthful of saliva. The little princess always ate sour fruits. What if her stomach got sick from eating them? After resting for half a day, the weather suddenly turned for the better. The dark clouds dispersed and the sun shone brightly. The beasts were just short of singing and dancing. Chu Qingyan stood up and smiled like a flower. "Let's go." Jean Xen glanced at the bags of fruits on the leopard's back. "And that's enough. Let's go." Hua Ling decided that once he left the mountain, he would buy some delicious food for the little princess. Delicious food. Let's go. As Chu Qingyan's group headed north again, the messenger eagle was released. Time flew by like a white steed and a few days passed in a flash. Xiao Su received the letter first. It said that their group was already heading towards them. Knowing that they were safe, the large stone in his heart finally fell down. This subordinate said that the little princess must have been delayed by something. Turin saw the gentle expression on his master's face and couldn't help smiling as he said this. As soon as his words fell, the sounds of fighting came from the foot of the mountain again. Turin instantly frowned. "Master, they're starting to attack again." In the past few days, it was like Xiao Ran's army had eaten explosives, continuously launching fierce attacks at them. Fortunately, his master had already made arrangements and played those people in circles. It was also thanks to the terrain here that one man could hold back 10,000. Even if the other side had several times more people than them, they didn't have much of an advantage. However, they wouldn't be able to last more than a few days. Just like his master said, although they had been playing hide and seek with the other side, once the other side figured out their tactics, they would quickly counterattack. In the end, it would become a battle of manpower. And in terms of manpower, there was a huge disparity. But this wasn't the most fatal thing. The most important thing was that their provisions were almost exhausted. "Master, do you think the old master will be able to successfully bring the people back?" Turin was a little worried. When this plan was carried out, the most crucial step was the old master. If the old master couldn't bring Wu Lin and the others back, then they could only be trapped on this mountain. They should have encountered some trouble. Xiao Su calculated the time and said without a change in expression, "Pass down the order. Hold on for a few more days." The more critical the situation was, the more it was when the morale of the army couldn't be faulty, yet Xiao Su was as calm and composed as before, without the slightest trace of panic. This undoubtedly allowed everyone to drink a bowl of calming water, and they continued to fight without retreating. Flint and stone collided, swords and sabers clashed, and the battle cries were about to break through the sky. The heat waves were rolling, shaking the whole world. In this cool autumn season, one could feel the heat from afar. Xiao Ran stood on the top of the mountain, opposite to where Xiao Su was. It was just that they were separated by the whole battlefield. Although he couldn't take down the mountain on the opposite side, he believed that he could afford to waste time, but Xiao Su and the others couldn't afford to waste time. There was nothing edible on that mountain, and their provisions were also destroyed. As long as they dragged on for a few more days, they wouldn't be able to hold on. Just as Xiao Ran calculated the time and revealed a confident smile, his gaze froze as a black shadow suddenly appeared at the end of the horizon. That was, Chu Qingyan led the Lai army, the beast herd, and the eagle soldiers quickly on the road. Because they were riding on the backs of the beast herd, they took the shortcut. This time, the shortcut was very difficult to travel by human strength. It was rugged with rocks and waterfalls, but these wolves, jackals, tigers, and leopards were all experts at climbing and jumping. It was easy for them to carry people, so they easily completed a journey that would have taken half a month in a few days. When Xiao Su received the letter and thought that they were still thousands of li away, they had already reached the north. But because they hadn't received any news from Xiao Su, Chu Qingyan and the others didn't know the exact location of the army and could only look as they walked. At this time, Fong Lu's sharp eyes pointed in a direction and exclaimed, "Little Wang Fei, look over there, there seems to be black smoke." In the distance, there was black smoke. In this broad daylight, if one didn't look carefully, it was hard to see clearly. "Let's go and see." Chu Qingyan stroked the piebald tiger under her. Her expression suddenly became serious as she said without delay. To be able to see the smoke from so far away, it probably wasn't as simple as the smoke from a farmer's kitchen. Based on her experience, Chu Qingyan faintly felt that the smoke should have been produced by fighting. Thus, the group of people rushed in that direction in an imposing manner. As they got closer, Chu Qingyan felt her heart suddenly beat faster. She couldn't help but narrow her eyes. On the top of the mountain, Xiao Su suddenly raised a hand to cover his chest. As if he sensed something, he looked into the distance. Chapter 1458. In the distance, a large and densely packed black shadow moved over quickly like the wind. When they gradually approached, they heard many people gasping. "Oh my God, are my eyes playing tricks on me? Isn't that a lion? I must be dreaming." A group of wild beasts. All run. When Xiao Ran's attacking army saw this scene, fear dominated their rationality and they wanted to retreat. "What are you panicking for? It's just a group of beasts. What's there to be afraid of? Pick up your weapons. If you kill one, you'll be rewarded with silver. If you kill 10, you'll be promoted." Xiao Ran's voice rose from the ground, powerful and resonant. Those people who were retreating immediately stopped in their tracks, held their spears and weapons, and roared as they rushed towards the group of wild beasts. In this lifetime, joining the army to fight, wasn't it all to make a living and then stand out? Now that such a chance was in front of them, they had to fight even if they had to risk their lives. What if they succeeded? Xiao Ran heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that the army had stabilized and was even more motivated than before. Wiping the sweat off his forehead, he turned his gaze back to the battlefield, intentionally or unintentionally searching for that figure. In the dark smoke, that crimson red became the most eye-catching scenery in the world. Water spirit's eyes, flawless jade skin, and all the beauty that belonged to women were covered up by the red battle robe. There were clearly thousands of people between the two of them, but she seemed to be right in front of him. However, no matter what his intentions were, she would never have him in her eyes. Xiao Ran gripped the reins tightly and wished he could grab her in front of him and question her fiercely. Did she have a heart? Why couldn't she give him a chance? Just as Xiao Ran was struggling in his heart, Chu Qingyan had already arrived at the bottom of the valley with her men. When she saw Xiao Su's military flag and this familiar tactic, she did not need to guess to know who was leading the troops. Other than her big ice cube, who else could fight well in such a disadvantageous situation where they were outnumbered? She curled her lips and her heart surged. She shouted, "Let's go up the mountain." To her, Xiao Ran's army was not important at all. She only wanted to see the person she had been thinking about. "Let's go, piebald tiger." She bent down and stroked her mount's head with a gentle smile. As if it could feel her excitement and joy, the piebald tiger roared at the sky and then ran up the mountain. Jin Exen, Hualing, and the others looked at each other and smiled. They immediately followed. When the horde of beasts appeared in his field of vision, Xiao Su's heart almost stopped beating. There was nothing more exciting in this world than seeing someone who was thousands of miles away suddenly appear in front of you. They were like scythes, and wherever they passed, not even a blade of grass was left. However, at this moment he only wanted to see the owner of the sickle. After being separated for dozens of days, he had suffered the pain of lovesickness. Now that the bitterness was over and the sweetness was coming, he couldn't wait any longer. The reason why this mountain could become Xiao Su's base of operations that was easy to defend and difficult to attack was because it had nothing but rocks. It was not easy to climb and it was easy to expose the target, so Xiao Ran's people were beaten down not long after they climbed up. Fortunately, her horde of beasts were all good climbers. They carried her up smoothly. When she was about to reach the peak, a hand suddenly stretched out from above. It was white and slender with distinct joints. The palm was facing her. The lines on the palm made her instantly dazzled under the sunlight. It was as if something had drilled into her heart. It was itchy, swollen, and warm. She did not hesitate. She reached out and gave herself to him. Their palms touched and their fingers intertwined. The missing corner was finally filled. She only felt the hand that was holding her lift, and her whole body was brought up. The mountain top slowly descended, and the people on the mountain top became clearer. When the silver mask appeared in her vision, she jumped up like a monkey and hugged his neck tightly. "Don't talk. Kiss me." When she pounced over, he had already raised his hand to support her. After she said those shocking words, he did not hesitate to lower his head to cover her. At the same time, he circulated his internal energy and disappeared in front of everyone in the blink of an eye. Fire Spirit rode on the white tiger and the smile on his face suddenly froze. He touched the back of his head. "Where is Master? Didn't I see him just now?" Sui was also at a loss. "Where was my master?" Only Turin, who had been standing at the same spot, looked at them coldly. "Why are you still standing there? Fight." Everyone then regained their senses and fired at the enemy with all their might. What a joke! The horde of beasts they brought were not to be trifled with. As for the two of them who had become hands-off shopkeepers, they were inseparable on the lush tree trunk. The little fellow's enthusiasm was beyond his imagination. However, the blood in his body was boiling more fiercely than hers. Their mouths were intertwined and they hated that they could not knead each other into their bones and blood. His clothes were half torn, and where was the aura of a commander from before? He was impatient and impatient. Where was the aura of a commander that was cold and abstinent? Chu Qingyan sat in his embrace and hugged his neck. She was like a fish that lacked water as she took in large breaths of air. Xiao Su hugged her waist and buried his face in her shoulder, breathing in the fragrance of her hair. Only now did he believe that the little fellow had finally returned to his side. She originally thought that the big ice cube would eat her up here. Although the situation was a bit special, she did not mind. The joy of reuniting covered all the shyness. However, at the crucial moment, he stopped, which made her a bit confused. "What is it?" she asked shyly. "There is no water here." It was not easy to clean it for her. Moreover, she was already too tired from rushing over. He could not only take care of himself. When Xiao Su said this, how could she not understand what he meant? She instantly blushed and raised her hand to hit his chest. Then, she blushed and let him help her tidy up her clothes. It was easy to take off clothes but difficult to put them on, especially at this kind of time when absence made the heart grow fonder. God knew how much self-control he used to restrain himself. In the end, he was sweating all over because of the heat. He could only use words to distract himself. "Why are you here so soon? Did anything happen in the south?" From Xiao Ran's sudden attack, he faintly guessed that she would not be safe there. However, the situation was too tense and he suddenly lost news of her. Chu Qingyan immediately recounted everything that had happened to them in detail. She mentioned how Yun Peak had submitted to them and how they had successfully reclaimed the 3 cities. Xiao Su listened to her and his eyes shone. When she finished, he leaned over and gave her a deep kiss. He did not let go of her until she was out of breath. He caressed her face and laughed wildly. "You are indeed my person." She snorted and reached out to pull him into her embrace. She straightened her waist and bit his lips. Then, she licked the corner of her mouth and said brightly, "You are also my person." The way that nimble little tongue licked her lips was as seductive as a peach. Coupled with her unintentional coquettish eyes, Xiao Su's eyes darkened. He lowered his head and heavily kissed her lips. "It's yours. It's all yours." Chapter 1459. The sky was clean, and the breeze was gentle, bringing with it the refreshing charm of autumn. Some of the piebald tigers were circling around under the trees, while others were lying on the ground, looking like they were standing guard. If anyone dared to approach, they would slap them. Of course, everyone was busy fighting the war, so who would have the time to provoke these mountain kings? The leaves were lush, and the scene inside could not be seen clearly. Xiao Su and Chu Qingyan fooled around inside for a while before they quieted down, as if they were enjoying this rare moment of tenderness. She leaned on him and said lazily, "Is it really okay to just leave the stall to them?" Although she asked this, there was no worry in her tone. Xiao Su raised his hand to pinch her nose and chuckled. "They've been by my side for at least 10 years, so it's time for them to take charge." She nodded in satisfaction and turned around to find a comfortable position in his arms. She yawned and closed her eyes. "Then I'll sleep in peace." Xiao Su wanted to talk to her again, but there was already a steady breathing in his arms. He was slightly stunned. She fell asleep just like that, not giving him any face at all. In any case, they had just reunited. Then he smiled helplessly, but his eyes were filled with endless doting. She was probably too tired from the journey, and he felt a little heartache. He settled her down, wrapped his arms around her body, and closed his eyes in peace. Thus, not far away, the people were fighting in full swing, shouting about the cold weather. They were completely unaware that their two masters had left them to leisurely catch up on sleep. If they knew the truth, they would probably cry to the heavens. But the war still had to be fought, and the enemy still had to be chased away. In the evening, Xiao Ran's army was chased back to the foot of the mountain, and everyone began to reorganize and rest. Xiao Su and Chu Qingyan then appeared in front of everyone hand in hand. What a pair of golden boy and jade girl. They blinded thousands of eyes in an instant. Before they even ate, they were fed a few mouthfuls of dog food. The babies felt bitter in their hearts, but they didn't say anything. Originally, they were stationed on the mountain and did not have much food to satisfy their hunger. They had to rely on the dry rations that they had brought. However, as time passed, the dry rations were running out. Now that Chu Qingyan and the others had arrived, not only did they help to repel Xiao Su's army, they also brought a lot of dry rations, some rabbit meat, wild boar meat, and so on. The soldiers who had not tasted meat for a long time were moved to tears. A bonfire was set up, and the fragrant smell of barbecued meat filled the air, arousing everyone's appetite. In a corner, someone was nibbling on a fruit. Chu Qingyan felt that the smell of meat that she usually smelled was so disgusting now. It was as if she could distinguish the rank odor in the air. No, she had to eat a few sour fruits to calm herself down. As she ate, her gaze followed the person who was talking to everyone. He was like a gentleman, shining brilliantly. No matter when or where, he was always so dazzling. Xiao Su felt her gaze and turned his head to search for her. When he met her gaze, his brows smiled, and his eyes were full of tenderness and love. Chu Qingyan felt sweet in her heart. She felt that the sour fruits were also sweet. Because the two of them had sneaked away, the generals were now pestering Xiao Su to report the situation of the battle and the casualties. When Xiao Su escaped, he had already fallen asleep leaning against a tree trunk. Bai Yutong and the others were lying beside her, as if they were using their fur to warm her. Once night fell, the temperature in the forest would start to drop. Moreover, it was already autumn now, and the night was even colder. Xiao Su walked over and took off his cloak to cover her. Then he sat beside her and carried her in his arms. After finishing this series of actions, the little fellow was not woken up. She was still sleeping soundly. He could not help but feel helpless and amused. Was the little fellow too tired or was her guard too low? After tormenting her like this, she still did not move? He thought that she was too tired, so he hugged her to sleep for the whole night. However, he seemed to have underestimated her ability to sleep. Ever since the day they reunited, she would always be half asleep with her eyes closed. As long as she found an opportunity, she would burrow into his embrace and fall asleep. If he had something to do, she would find a corner to sleep. Bai Yutong and the others would eagerly run over to be her blanket and pillow, wishing that they could let their mistress sleep on their stomachs. To Chu Qingyan, since there was her family's big ice cube, she did not have to worry about anything. She could leave Lai Jun to him, the beasts to him, and Xiao Qi to follow by her side. So she could rest assured and continue her dream. 2 days later, Xiao Su finally felt that something was wrong. His heart was like this. Why was his wife so clingy to him? She was hugging the tree trunk to sleep all day. How could she continue like this? So after arranging the battle plan for the day, Xiao Su separated his person from the tree trunk and carried her into his arms. Then he sat down and looked down at the person in his arms. Her pink little face seemed to be getting redder and redder. Her long eyelashes fluttered and she was extremely cute. She did not look sick at all. Instead, her skin was white and rosy, making her even more charming. Xiao Su slightly frowned. She did not look like she was sick. Then why did she sleep all day? At this time, he noticed that the little fellow was holding something in her hand. He took a look and saw that it was a small fruit that she had taken a bite out of. He knew that she did not like to eat dry food these days and had been eating fruits all day. Because he did not like to eat fruits, he did not try the taste. Seeing that she was eating so happily, he hesitated for a moment before taking a bite out of the place where she had bitten. The moment he took a bite, Xiao Su's face twitched. Could this thing be eaten? At this time, Jean Xian came over with a bag of things. What is this? Xiao Su put down the sour fruit and raised his eyebrows. Jean Xian opened the bag and revealed a row of green sour fruits that were different in size from his hand. Xiao Su felt that his teeth were about to fall out. He could not help but look at the person in his arms. Did the little fellow eat these recently? His eyebrows immediately wrinkled. Could it be that the little fellow was really sick? He immediately pulled out her wrist and put his fingers on her pulse. Although he did not know medicine, as a martial arts practitioner, he knew how to take a pulse. When he heard the sound of her pulse, Xiao Su's body stiffened. He was like a statue and his eyes did not even move. Jean Xian's heart was in his throat when he saw this. Your Highness, is there a problem with Master's body? This voice pulled Xiao Su's attention back. He said in an erratic tone, Call Ethereal over quick. Jean Xian immediately turned around and dragged Ethereal over. Originally, when Jean Xian pulled him over without a word, Ethereal felt that something was wrong. When he saw his master holding the little princess in a daze, he felt even more uneasy. He immediately went forward and carefully placed his hand on the little princess's pulse. Ha! Ethereal retracted his finger and smiled like a spring flower. Master, the little princess is pregnant. Chapter 1460. Chu Qingyan woke up amidst the joyous noise. She looked blankly at the bouncing Xiao Lai. Big Ice Cube, what happened to Huoling and the rest? Just as she pointed forward, she paused. Oh my God, what happened to her Big Ice Cube? Why was he so happy? Big Ice Cube, don't scare me. She grabbed his sleeve and whimpered. Xiao Su lowered his head and held her hand. His eyes were still filled with ecstasy. Although it was a lot more restrained than before, but, I'm pregnant. Chu Qingyan was dumbfounded. Oh my God, water must have entered Big Ice Cube's brain. Seeing the person in his arms looking like she had seen a ghost, Xiao Su finally realized what he had said. He said, I was wrong. You're going to be a father. Chu Qingyan's eyes widened. Oh my God, Big Ice Cube's brain must have been caught by a door. No, she had to call Ethereal over to check on Big Ice Cube. Why was there something wrong with Big Ice Cube the moment she woke up? What the hell had happened while she was sleeping? Just as Chu Qingyan was struggling to get up from his arms, Xiao Su finally regained his senses. Seeing her worried expression, he realized that he had done something stupid. He immediately pulled her back into his arms and wrapped his arms around her from behind. His palms landed on her abdomen and he rested his chin on her shoulder. His voice was gentle and affectionate. Ayan, you're pregnant. I'm going to be a father. The person who was still worried about whether or not her Big Ice Cube had taken his medicine was stunned when she heard this. She didn't even dare to move. Only when she felt warmth on her back did she slowly relax. She murmured, I'm going to be a mother? Yes, we're going to have our own children. Xiao Su turned her body around until they were face to face. He lowered his head and pressed his forehead against hers. His voice was unbelievably gentle. Chu Qingyan followed his gaze and looked at her flat stomach. She couldn't help but reach out to touch it. Heat swirled in her chest and rushed to her eyes. I can't believe that there's a little life here. It's in my stomach. Her eyes were slightly red and sparkling. She was helpless, happy, and touched by the arrival of a new life. A pair of large hands covered the back of her hand, as if he was wrapping her little hand in his palm. Then, they were both caressing their child. A child. He said, Our child. When it's born. Our child, our child. And the unfair treatment that Big Ice Cube had received when he was young had always been a thorn in her heart. He was such an intelligent and handsome youth. Why was he not liked by others? She pursed her lips and smiled. Her smile was as moving as the spring breeze blowing through the clear water. She nodded in agreement. We'll love it well. We won't let it suffer any grievances. A father's love and a mother's love will not be lacking in its childhood. Shenmo's eyes were full of smiles. They were bright and dazzling. It was even more captivating than the morning sun and the sunset. We won't be absent. If it's a daughter, you'll teach her the zither, chess, poetry, calligraphy, and painting. I'll teach her etiquette, music, archery, defense, and mathematics. Our daughter will definitely be as beautiful as you. Chu Qingyan continued his words. Her eyes were full of smiles. If it's a son, I'll teach him how to conduct himself. And you'll teach him everything you've learned. I want him to be like you and become a hero in the hearts of the people. I'll pour all my love into him. The childhood that you missed, I'll make it up to our son. A small version of Big Ice Cube would definitely make people's hearts ache. However, when the day came, she would only want to stuff that stinky brat into her stomach and remake him. Of course, this was a story for another time. Cough cough. A cough was heard in an attempt to attract the attention of the two prospective parents. Unfortunately, the two who were about to become parents didn't notice at all. They continued to immerse themselves in their endless imagination. And the few people who had been in the background for a long time finally couldn't bear it anymore. Master, this is pregnancy stabilizing medicine. You have to let the young princess consort drink it while it's hot. Master, do you want to eat some small fruits? This subordinate brought by Yutong to pick a bag of them. Young princess consort, what do you think of this quilt? This subordinate just made a feather quilt. You definitely won't feel cold when you sleep at night. Master, this subordinate just went to pick a bird's nest. I'm going to give it to you to nourish your body. Ethereal was holding a bowl of medicine, Jean Xen was carrying a cloth bag, Hualing was holding a quilt, Sui was carrying a basket of bird eggs, Snowflake Cake was biting on a pheasant, Xiao Hai threw a giant snake to the ground, and Glutinous Rice Ball was rubbing his body against her, wanting to warm her up. Chu Qingyan and Xiao Su looked at each other. Then they silently separated and stood up. Then they lightly coughed. That pair of retarded parents from before was definitely not them. Heavens! However, an unexpected person rushed over. What? I heard that I have a grandson. A person whose face was covered in soot jumped in front of Chu Qingyan with a whoosh sound. He seemed to be very unhappy. Xiao Su had just stepped forward to protect the little one, but the moment the other party spoke, he retracted his hand. He stared at the person who had already turned into soot, and the corner of his mouth twitched uncontrollably. Chu Qingyan's reaction was no less than Xiao Su's. She swallowed her saliva and pursed her lips at the charcoal in front of her. She called out tentatively, "Father?" Puckle answered happily, "I. My darling Kai Kai, quickly tell father, are you going to give birth to a grandson or a granddaughter? Father can't wait to hug you." "Father, daughter remembers that you should be with mother in a safe place right now." In an instant, the atmosphere froze. With Chu Qingyan as the center, the atmosphere was fully released and dispersed in all directions. Ethereal and the others immediately took a step back and raised their hands high, indicating that this had nothing to do with them. Mr. Chu finally sensed that the atmosphere was not right. He blinked and swallowed his saliva. Then he wanted to retreat to Ethereal's side to hide, but Ethereal and the others were faster. They immediately took a few steps back and distanced themselves from the battlefield. "Father, if you confess, you'll be lenient. If you resist, you'll be punished severely." Mr. Chu stopped in his tracks. He turned his head and wanted to cry, but no tears came out. He accused the person behind her, "It's my son-in-law, it's my son-in-law." Chu Qingyan narrowed her eyes and looked at him. Then she turned to look at her big iceberg and asked word by word, "What's going on?" Xiao Su looked at the person walking over step by step. Cold sweat trickled down his forehead. It looked like he was definitely going to take the blame for his father-in-law. In the end, Mr. Chu squatted in a corner and drew circles. Xiao Su watched as Mr. Chu drew circles. "Son-in-law, pregnant women tend to have bad tempers. Father has experienced it before, so I know very well. Son-in-law understands." After that, the two of them sighed in unison. Sigh. Chapter 1461. Father Chu's appearance brought good news. After meeting up with Wu Lin, he used the trap set by Xiao Su to successfully return to the army. The two armies met and their forces grew stronger. You don't know how much effort I put in to lure those bastards away. I was almost disfigured. Chu Machen's father complained tearfully. As he cried, he stole glances at his daughter. He wanted to win her sympathy so that he could be forgiven. However, his daughter had a heart of stone. After hearing his words, she became even colder, making him feel like he was digging his own grave. Ethereal smiled and comforted him. "You've worked hard, old master." Little Ear, who was at the side, added, "You were the one who stepped into the pit when you heard that the little princess consort was pregnant." Father Chu stomped his foot. "Little Ear, if you don't say anything, we can still be friends." Little Ear moved to the side and looked at the sky. Everyone couldn't help but laugh. Xiao Su shook his head and then signaled Wu Lin to report the situation. "General, we lost more than 2,000 people. More than 3,000 soldiers were injured. Now we have nearly 50,000 men." When Wu Lin said this, his head gradually lowered. There was a hint of hatred in his voice. Those were the people he brought up personally, but now Wu Lin's emotions affected everyone present. Their eyes turned red. "Don't worry, I will avenge them," Xiao Su said to everyone present in a serious voice. Everyone nodded. Father Chu stopped making a fuss. The smile on his face disappeared and he became serious again. From Big Ice Cube's explanation, Chu Qingyan found out that her father had regained his consciousness. However, when they met just now, he still had that innocent look on his face, which made her somewhat suspicious. Now that she saw her father looking so serious for the first time, she could not help but believe their words. Her father had regained his consciousness. To her, today was a double blessing. She had a child with Big Ice Cube, and her father had finally found his lost self. This was the greatest fortune among all the misfortunes. After everyone calmed down, they began to discuss how to deal with the future. Time passed quickly just like that. Daughter, Daddy wants to have a grandson soon. The person in front of her was really not worthy of praise. She had just said that he was serious, and now he was acting like a 3-year-old child asking for candy. Chu Qingyan rubbed her forehead and said good-naturedly, "Father, no matter how anxious you are, the baby still needs 10 months to be born. Furthermore, this is your grandchild, not your grandson." "Oh," Mr. Chu replied. Then he continued to lick his face and blinked. "What if I want to see it as soon as possible?" "Father, it's already late. You can go and dream." Chu Qingyan smiled and winked at Little Ear. Little Ear immediately came over and pulled Chu Qingyan's father to rest. "General, we still have to fight tomorrow. You have to quickly recover your energy. Otherwise, what will we do if we can't beat the enemy?" Yes, I need to rest." "Hey, daughter, you have to take good care of my grandson." "Good night, my dear grandson." General, it's your grandson." "Little Ear, you talk too much." After watching her father leave, Chu Qingyan started to look around for the Big Ice Cube. After the meeting, Chu Qingyan could clearly feel that her Big Ice Cube's aura had become much colder. However, when her father interrupted, she lost sight of him. "Jean Exon, did you see His Highness?" Jean Exon nodded and pointed in a direction. "His Highness was talking to Ethereal just now. He should be over there now." "All right, there's nothing for you to do here. Go." She waved her hand and walked over. When she got closer, she realized that it was the place where the soldiers usually cooked. At this moment, a tall figure was half-squatting to light a fire for a stove. She rubbed her eyes, unable to believe that it was him. Hearing the sound, Xiao Su thought that Ethereal had returned. Without turning his head, he said, "I still need to boil it into a bowl of water. Go and help me gather some firewood." The footsteps walked away, but after a while, they walked over again. He reached out and the firewood was placed in his hand. He focused on boiling the medicine while the person standing behind him passed him the firewood. There was a faint fragrance in the air. Finally, Xiao Su felt that something was wrong. He turned around and saw the person standing behind him. Chu Qingyan held the firewood and smiled at him with her head tilted. Xiao Su immediately stood up. He did not even care about the stove. He took the firewood from her hand and could not bear to scold her. He pulled her into his arms and whispered, "Didn't I tell you to stay here? Why did you come here? The baby said that he missed you." She laughed softly, easily stopping him from scolding her. Xiao Su hugged her tightly and sighed. "What should I do? I'm completely under your control now. You're not convinced?" She raised her voice. "I'm willing." He chuckled and hugged her even tighter. She curled her lips into a smile, then leaned into his embrace and asked worriedly, "Did you run into some trouble? I saw that you were not in a good mood just now." "The provisions can't last more than 2 days." He wanted to hide it from her, but he knew that she would find out sooner or later. He might as well tell her directly, so that she would not have to guess and worry. It was not good for her health. Chu Qingyan was mentally prepared, but she still frowned when she heard it. She only found out a few days ago that Sichuan Emperor burned their provisions. He really wanted to kill them all. If not for the big ice cube strategy, the army would have been defeated. "Don't worry, there's always a way out." Xiao Su patted her back as he comforted her. Chu Qingyan nodded gently. If he could stand tall, he could carry the sky that was falling down. If he could bend down, he could boil medicine for his wife and child. This kind of flexible person would definitely lead them to victory. Since ancient times, evil could not win over good. Just as Chu Qingyan was obediently letting her baby's father feed medicine, Hualing rushed over. "What happened?" Xiao Su asked, his hands not stopping. Hualing took out a letter and said to the two, "This was sent by young Master Hua's family. It's for the little princess consort." She was a bit surprised. What kind of urgent matter did this fellow send her a letter at this time? She took it and impatiently opened it. When she finished reading the contents, she couldn't help but facepalm. This fellow really warmed her heart. Did something happen to the shops in Jiangnan? Xiao Su leaned over. He thought that she was vexed and couldn't help but ask with a raised brow. Chu Qingyan waved her hand and said with a smile, No, Jiangnan's business is good. It's just," she paused and her eyes sparkled, "Sleeve asked if we were lacking food. She stored quite a bit for us. She said it's enough for the 3 armies to eat for a year." Hualing's eyes lit up. The Hua family's young master really sent charcoal in the snow. Xiao Su held her hand and said with a low laugh, "As expected, there's always a way out." She just found out that she was pregnant and Sleeve sent a big gift. It really was too much of a coincidence. She rubbed her stomach and held his hand back. She said with a laugh, "This gift really came at the right time." Chapter 1462. Hua Xiuli did not expect that her assistance would come at such a coincidental time. She had personally escorted the rations, but because the battlefield was dangerous, she only had time to deliver the rations to the people sent by Xiao Su before returning to Jiangnan. However, when she delivered the rations, she received a reply from her good friend, which made her very surprised. When she returned to Jiangnan, she poked her husband. Her face was full of grievances, but her tone was full of joy. "Qingyan is pregnant, and she even cheated me of 100,000 rations, saying that it's New Year's money for the baby. What the hell, I didn't even take a look at my godson, and she gave me such a big red packet. I'm at a loss. Sob. Miser, you have to make a decision for me." Although she said that, she was very happy for her good friend. The rations were originally bought by her good friend, and she was only helping to manage them. Now, they were returned to their rightful owner. However, when she saw her miser, she could not help but act coquettishly. Unexpectedly, Lin Fengyi did not say anything and picked her up by the waist, walking into the room like the wind under his feet. "Hey, what are you doing?" It was broad daylight, and they could not be seen by the servants. Her dignity was at stake. "Didn't you want me to make a decision? Listen to me, we'll have babies too. If they have 1, we'll have 2. If they have 2, we'll have 3. Our numbers will surpass theirs, and in the future, the red packets they give us will definitely be more than the red packets we give them. So, let's work hard and not be left behind by them. Otherwise, there will be red packets from us in the future." Lin Fengyi finished his words without blushing or skipping a beat. Hua Xiuli felt that his words were very reasonable. Although she did not know what was wrong, she still nodded. However, when she was pressed down on the bed, she finally knew what was wrong. Miser, you bad person, treating me like a sow. And a few more. Wait, that's not right, you bastard, get off me. You? Sob sob. The red and fragrant tent rippled with waves. Every minute of the night was worth 1,000 gold. Oh no, making babies, every minute was worth 1,000 gold. Chu Qingyan naturally didn't know what kind of result she brought to her good friend. At this time, she was smiling as she counted the provisions. The provisions prepared by the richest man in Jiangnan were even better than those offered to the imperial court. This time, their soldiers and horses would definitely be able to eat until they were strong and healthy. After receiving the letter from Hua Xiu yesterday, Xiao Su made a prompt decision. He gathered all the troops and rushed down the mountain. Now they were no longer in the valley. Although there were tens of thousands of troops less than Xiao Ran, it was not as big as before. At least they could fight head-on with the other party. Because their actions were too unexpected, they were able to smoothly occupy one side and contend with Xiao Ran as an equal. As the sun rose, Xiao Su received a piece of good news. Lu Guang sent a message saying that he has successfully subdued the Rising Wind army. Now they are still biding their time. As long as Master gives the order, they will immediately revolt. Everyone in the tent was excited when they heard the news. This way, their numbers were basically equal to Xiao Ran's. Very good. Xiao Su curled his lips into a smile. He ordered all the soldiers to reorganize and wait for the opportunity to fight. As if they saw the dawn of victory, everyone valiantly walked out of the main tent. There were no outsiders in the tent. Xiao Su personally poured a cup of hot water and handed it to the person beside him. Drink a cup of hot water to warm up your body. Chu Qingyan's lips twitched. Although it was already autumn, it shouldn't be this cold, right? However, Big Ice Cube was also concerned about her. She took the cup and drank a mouthful under his gaze. Ever since Big Ice Cube knew that she was pregnant, he didn't let her do anything. From brewing medicine to serving porridge to changing clothes and shoes, he didn't let anyone help him. He did everything himself. It made her wonder if she had already lost the ability to take care of herself. After she fought for her rights several times to no avail, she could only give up and watch him busy in front of her. She also felt sorry for him. At this juncture, not only did he have to pay attention to the overall situation and lead troops to fight, he also had to take care of himself. It was too hard. However, a certain someone was willing to endure it. Every day, he would lie on her stomach and greet the unformed baby. It was only 1 or 2 months. How could he hear the baby's voice? However, Chu Qingyan did not want to tell him the truth and dampen his enthusiasm. Seeing that he was behaving like a big kid, she was also affected. She would talk to the baby for no reason. Thus, the two of them were like a pair of retarded parents. They would gather together and talk to the baby. Big Ice Cube, you should rest for a while. These 2 days, I haven't seen you sleep at all. You're as busy as a spinning top. Even if your mind can take it, your body can't take it. She put down the teacup and reached out to tug at his sleeve, looking at him worriedly. Once on the battlefield, it was common for him to not rest for several days and nights. However, when he met the little fellow's water spirit's gaze, he changed the words in his mouth and nodded according to her wishes. However, the little fellow was insatiable. She wanted him to rest under her eyes, afraid that he would secretly go busy again. In the end, Xiao Su lay on the bed and rested his head on her lap. From bottom to top, the person on top of his head looked at him with a smile. He couldn't help but reach out to wrap his arms around her waist. It was still so small. It was hard to imagine that this delicate body was pregnant with a life, a child connected to his blood. Ian, how are you feeling today? She gently massaged his shoulders and smiled. Ethereal said that at my age I would start to vomit. However, I don't know if it's because the baby understands me, but other than being addicted to acid and lethargy, there are no other symptoms. It's very stable. Xiao Su curved his lips. He leaned over and kissed her stomach through her clothes. It's very obedient. Very good. When it's born, I'll reward it well. Chu Qingyan pursed her lips and smiled. She raised a hand to caress her stomach. The familiar fragrance made him sleepy. Slowly, he closed his eyes and fell asleep. She had been sleeping recently and didn't feel sleepy at all. Seeing this, she leaned against the bedpost and quietly looked at the person in her arms. There was a happy and satisfied smile in her eyes. Family. What a beautiful word. In Prince Yi's manor in the capital, Lin Jiangdong brought a few pieces of news. First, Chu Qingyan was pregnant. Second, Junlin's army had been defeated. Third, Sichuan Emperor was critically ill. Xiao Ho, who was watering the flower pot, heard the news. He casually put the kettle on the windowsill and took the cloth towel from the servant to wipe his hands. There was a smile on his face. It's all good news. Lin Jiangdong also smiled. The wrinkles on his face were almost like chrysanthemums. Yes, after waiting for so long, we finally got it. He knew who he was referring to without saying it. Xiao Ho chuckled. Write a letter to Imperial Brother and tell him that it's time to return to the capital. Chapter 1463. When Xiao Ran received the battle report, he suddenly felt a little dejected. After experiencing so many unforeseen events, there was always a time when he could not hold on any longer. He did not expect that after forcing Xiao Su into such a desperate situation, he would still be able to escape. Xiao Ran had cut off his rations, cut off his escape route, and was still able to peacefully contend against him as an equal. Sometimes, Xiao Ran couldn't help but wonder if the heavens were on his side, helping him all the time. Your Highness, their men are stationed 30 miles away from us. There are a total of 50,000 soldiers and horses. When Yanshi saw Xiao Ran like this, he did not want to bother him with these things, but at this juncture, he had to be more vigilant. Xiao Ran chuckled, You missed out. They still have a beast army. That was a terrifying force that could fight against 5 enemies by himself. Yanshi was startled when he heard this, and fear appeared in his eyes. He did not forget that 2 days ago, the horde of beasts had passed through like locusts. Wherever they went, not a single blade of grass was left alive. It was still a clean death under the sword, and there was no pain. However, if he fell into the beast army, he would not be able to live or die. Xiao Ran noticed Yanshi's expression, and a hint of bitterness appeared at the corner of his mouth. Humans could fight against the heavens and fight against humans, but creatures like beasts, you could not communicate with them. The moment they came up, they would tear and bite. They were incomparably vigorous and could not be understood. In the end, they could only passively take a beating. Qingyan, oh Qingyan, what did he do to deserve such devotion from you? Then Your Highness, what should we do now? After all, Yanshi had led the army for many years, so he quickly put away his emotions and asked respectfully. Although they have a horde of beasts, strictly speaking, we still have a lot more people than them. So, we must take advantage of this opportunity to catch them all in one fell swoop. Has the gunpowder arrived? The dejection only lasted for a moment, and Xiao Ran quickly pulled himself together. Thinking that the batch of gunpowder that he had asked someone to make should have arrived, he relaxed for a moment. Yanshi immediately nodded. I've received the letter. It will be delivered this afternoon. Very good, now we have nothing to fear even if they have a horde of beasts. Xiao Ran revealed a cold smile. Water Spirit had sent 2 letters, both of which contained important news. Junlin's army had been defeated and had now retreated from Sichuan. Hong Jianhua and Lin Meng led their troops to take over all the cities in the west. The imperial court's troops were all subdued and posed no threat. Lin Meng led 30,000 troops to guard the city while Hong Jianhua led the remaining 50,000 on the way to support them. The other letter was from the capital and contained only a few short lines. Consort, you made her move. The emperor was critically ill. She began to draw in the net and quickly returned to the capital. Chu Qingyan didn't have any problems understanding the first letter, but the last letter made her extremely confused. Although she could understand every word, she couldn't understand when they were strung together. When there was no one around, she grabbed Big Ice by the collar and approached him. She snorted. Are you and Prince E hiding something from me? Could it be that this is the backup plan you were talking about? In Xiao Su's eyes, her slender fingers didn't seem to be grabbing his clothes. Instead, they seemed to be resting on his chest, tickling him and making him restless. He raised his hand to cover her small hand and rubbed the back of her hand with his fingertips. His eyes sparkled. Yes, before the alliance of the 3 countries, we had already planned it. But we didn't expect the invasion of foreign enemies, which delayed a lot of time. Seeing him admit it, her pretense of being mean immediately dissipated. She blinked her big eyes curiously and couldn't wait to ask, "Come on, tell me, what's the plan?" "It's not the right time yet." Xiao Su pinched her nose. When he saw her accusing eyes, he couldn't help but chuckle. "You're so bad, so bad." She slapped his hand away and pretended to be on the verge of tears as she caressed her stomach. "Baby, look at your father. He's always bullying your mother. When you come out, you must properly teach your father a lesson on behalf of your mother." Xiao Su found it funny. He pulled her into his arms and tapped her lips with his finger. He smiled and said, "Tell on me to the baby? You're so cute." Coaxing her like a child. She opened her mouth and bit his finger. Then she proudly showed off to him. However, when she met his eyes that instantly darkened, she realized what she had done. Just as she loosened her mouth and was about to spit out his finger, he had already lowered his head and covered her lips with his, taking away all her breath and heartbeat. Sure enough, the evils brought on by oneself were the hardest to bear. The sun was already setting over the mountain, ready to set. Xiao Su gently patted the sleeping person on the bed and greedily looked at her sleeping face. Finally, he stood up and walked towards the main tent. The little fellow was already pregnant, so it was best for her not to participate in many things. This was also the reason why he didn't tell her about his plan. When he arrived at the main tent, everyone stood up. "Sit down. What's the situation now?" Xiao Su raised his hand and gestured. All the generals sat down again. Wu Lin stepped forward, his face full of joy. "An hour ago, our men had already found their way to the back of the enemy's army and snatched their provisions. Those that we couldn't snatch, we destroyed them. We can finally hold our heads high. We've avenged the grudge of snatching their provisions." Xiao Su nodded. His generals didn't attack unless they attacked them. If they attacked them, they wouldn't let them off easily. Chu Yang's father also jumped out and smiled slyly. "Didn't you send troops to patrol today?" "I accidentally found something and my heart itched, so I snatched it to take a look." "Good fellow, several large carriages of gunpowder. No wonder so many people want to be the king of the mountain. It's so fun to snatch it." Everyone silently ignored Chu Yang's father's last few words. "That gunpowder was used by Xiao Ran to deal with us. I never thought that the old man would snatch it away. It really is satisfying." Everyone laughed loudly. Xiao Su was very satisfied and his voice became a bit lighter. "The provisions have been lost and the gunpowder has been stolen. This time they will definitely fight to the death with us, so we don't need to be polite with them." With the provisions and gunpowder gone, with Xiao Ran's personality, he would definitely be furious. In order to appease the army, he would use all of his firepower to attack them. Otherwise, if this dragged on, it wouldn't be good for them. Lord is right. Although we don't have as many people as them, we have nothing to fear if we go all out. Lu Weiyun straightened his back and spoke in a firm voice. Once these words were said, everyone agreed. "Who said we don't have as many people as them?" A clear voice came from outside the tent, making everyone look outside. The first to come in was Hualing. He happily pulled the curtain to the side and several figures appeared in front of everyone. At the same time, there was a loud voice, "Lon Manor's Manor Lord has arrived." Chapter 1464. A beautiful woman in a sky-blue dress leisurely walked over. She was gentle but not lacking in magnanimity, beautiful but not lacking in heroic spirit. Every frown and smile of hers carried an air of elegance and confidence. It was rare for someone to be able to fuse these two opposite temperaments together in such a harmonious manner. After the woman walked in, an extremely young and handsome man strolled in. He was dressed in a luxurious white robe and had a calm expression on his face. Two servants followed behind them, a man and a woman. The man was calm while the woman was lively. The generals present did not recognize these people and looked at them warily. Their hands were already at their waists, ready to draw their swords with a single order. The woman did not seem to sense the tense atmosphere. She looked around but did not find the person she wanted to see. She crossed her arms and glanced at Xiao Su. "Where's my little Qingyan?" "Resting." "Why you here?" Xiao Su raised his eyebrows and gestured with his hand. Everyone withdrew their hands, and their vigilance turned into curiosity towards these people. If he remembered correctly, this lawn manor should belong to the pugilistic world. Why was it here? Sima Jun did not hesitate to find a seat and sat down. Ji Linyang also sat down beside her silently, as if there was no one else in his eyes other than the woman in front of him. "I happened to pass by, so I came to take a look." Sima Jun looked left and right and snorted. "His Royal Highness, you're quite strict with your troops. If you didn't mention little Qingyan's name, I wouldn't have been able to enter. The military camp is like this. May I know what manor lord meant by that?" Although he was not familiar with these people, they were all the little fellow's friends. Xiao Su had someone serve them tea and receive them as VIPs. Sima Jun took a sip of tea and her eyes lit up. To be able to drink Biluakun at a time like this, it was obvious that they were treated well by her family. Sima Jun nodded in satisfaction and had a better impression of Xiao Su. She did not beat around the bush and directly stated her intentions. "I heard that you were in trouble a while ago and sent people to receive you. I didn't expect that no one would come. Instead, I heard that you led your troops to war, so I came to see if there was anything I could help with." She was just passing by a moment ago, but in the blink of an eye, she changed her attitude. Everyone was very surprised by this person who spoke without thinking. However, Ji Linyang and the others were very calm. It was obvious that they were already used to it. Xiao Su raised his eyebrows. Just as he was about to say something, the curtain of the tent was lifted, and a figure rushed in. "Sima is here?" He could not hide his surprise. Sima Jun saw that the person was her good friend. She was about to stand up and greet him when someone beat her to it. Xiao Su draped the cloak over the little fellow's shoulders and tied the straps. He admonished her dotingly, "It's getting colder and colder. Why didn't you wear thicker clothes when you went out? You're about to become a mother." Chu Qingyan stuck out her tongue and obediently allowed him to tidy her up. Huoling said that Sima was here. "I was too happy and forgot." Everyone covered their eyes after being fed a mouthful of dog food for no reason. The scene was too beautiful and they did not dare to look. Sima Jun poked the person beside her. "Did you see that? The gentleness of a man of steel is really enviable." Ji Linyang raised his brows. "Oh, you like this?" Sima Jun could not help but tremble at his malicious tone. She chuckled. "I'm just joking. Don't take it seriously." She suddenly seemed to wake up. "What did you just say? A mother? Little Qingyan, you're pregnant?" She leaped over so quickly that no one could see her movements clearly. It was only when she stood in front of Chu Qingyan that everyone realized that this person's qinggong was simply godly. When Chu Qingyan saw who it was, she immediately pushed her big ice cube to the side and happily held Sima Jun's hand. She nodded vigorously. Yes. Sima, long time no see. I missed you so much." Sima Jun reached out and hugged her. She jumped up happily. Long time no see, long time no see. I'm going to be a godmother." "Ha, yes, you're going to be a godmother. I can't use words to describe how happy I am right now. Please allow me to laugh 3 times. Haha." Xiao Su, who had been ignored by his wife, and Ji Linyang, who had also been abandoned by his wife, looked at each other and saw the helplessness in each other's eyes. Before the two of them could hug enough, they were pulled apart by their men. Sima Jun glared at her petty man. Thinking that her good friend was pregnant now, she reluctantly sat back down. Chu Qingyan seemed to have gotten used to her big ice cube's invisible dominance. She sat down obediently and then couldn't help but exclaim in surprise, "Sima, it's chaotic here. Why are you here?" She then turned to Ji Linyang and asked, "Master Ji, Why don't you take care of Sima? Sima Jun choked on her tea. Ji Linyang was very pleased with her words and nodded solemnly. I'll take good care of her in the future. Sima Jun glared at him but couldn't hide her reddened ears. It's none of your business. Ji Linyang nodded seriously. Yes, it's none of my business. Sima Jun almost spat out a mouthful of blood. Forget it, I won't stoop to his level. She remembered the important matter and took out a token from her pocket and had Tan Ying hand it to her good friend. This is... Chu Qingyan took the token with the word, blue, written on it, puzzled. Sima Jun brushed the dust off her clothes and said with a smile, this is the blue token. It can mobilize the troops of any place in the Blue Manor. However, there's no need to mobilize them. I've already brought them here and they're ready to listen to your orders at any time. Huh? Chu Qingyan didn't know how to react. Shan Guang, who was standing behind Sima Jun, said with a smile, my master heard that you're short on manpower, so he transferred half of our men here. He hopes that they can be of help. Chu Qingyan's eyes moistened. She was extremely touched. She turned to her good friend. I appreciate your kindness, but I can't accept this token. Sima Jun waved her hand heroically. You don't have to be so polite. Just take it as a meeting gift from me to my future godson and goddaughter. You can return them to me when you're done with the war. Her tone was firm, so Chu Qingyan had no choice but to accept it. Her heart was still surging with emotions. At this time, Ji Linyang also took out a token and handed it to Chu Qingyan. This is the token of the Ji family. 20,000 troops are ready to be dispatched at any time. Not only Chu Qingyan and the others, but even Sima Jun was stunned. She clearly hadn't expected him to do this. Linyang, what are you doing? Ji Linyang smiled. Of course it's a meeting gift for my future godson and goddaughter. The generals present were stunned by the generosity of these two people who gave away troops without a word. What kind of friends did their Wang Fei make? If they weren't sending provisions, then they were sending troops and horses. This was too valiant. Chapter 1465. Sima Jun and Ji Linyang were very efficient. As soon as Chu Qingyan received the token, she was immediately sent outside the camp. There was a simple reception banquet at night. Chu Qingyan was very grateful for the help the two of them provided. Sima, I really don't know what to say about what you've done. Sima Jun waved her hand and said indifferently, you've also helped me. There are a lot of idle people in the manor. They're all holed up in the manor and grass is about to grow out of their heads. I didn't kick you here to help me loosen them up so that they won't keep nagging by my ear. They're about to grow calluses. As she spoke, she even pretended to dig her ears. Chu Qingyan knew that she was only saying this to make her feel better. The Blue Manor's business was so big that she had too much work to do. How could she be so free? Chu Qingyan knew that if she continued to speak like this, she would be too pretentious. Chu Qingyan filled Gu Ruoyun's cup with wine, then took her own cup and toasted Gu Ruoyun. I will use tea as wine to celebrate our reunion. Who was it that said that all meetings in the world are reunions after a long separation? Let's toast to this reunion. Sima Jun took her cup and clinked it with hers. Then, she drank it all in one gulp. Hua Ling, Turin, and the others sat at another table. They knew that they couldn't drink too much because of the upcoming battle, but they couldn't help but feel happy. The atmosphere slowly became lively. There was only one place in the tent that was the quietest. Xiao Su and Ji Linyang looked at each other in silence, their eyes dark and unreadable. The Ji family, is it the Ji family I'm thinking of? That's right, it's the Ji family you're thinking of. One asked calmly, while the other answered calmly. The Ji family, that was a place that lived in legends. Xiao Su had always thought that it was just a legend, a place that people imagined. It didn't exist in the world at all. I wonder if it's a boy or a girl. Why don't I get someone to buy them both? You won't only have one child anyway. What nonsense are you saying? Laughter and banter rang out, causing the two of them to turn their heads. Xiao Su and Ji Linyang looked at the two women whose faces were flushed. They smiled and shook their heads. Then they raised their cups. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. One was an ambitious and ruthless person, while the other was a young master in seclusion. Originally, they had nothing to do with each other, but because of these two women, they became acquainted. A greeting of, nice to meet you, is a friend. At this moment, the atmosphere was relaxed, as if the coldness just now was just an illusion. With Sima Jun and Ji Linyang's help, Xiao Su was like a tiger that had grown wings. With Feng Qijuan in hiding, he could easily suppress Xiao Ran on horseback. After a battle that dealt a heavy blow to Xiao Ran's army, Xiao Su directly handed over the command to Hong Jianhua, who had rushed over with his army. This prince needs to make a trip back to the capital. The army will be under your command. Initially, he planned to return after dealing with Xiao Ran's army. But looking at the current situation, there was no need for him to stay. Hong Jianhua nodded and took the military order. Xiao Su left the main tent after explaining the follow-up and walked into his own tent. Inside the tent, the little girl was sleeping soundly. He silently sat down on the bed and waited for the cold air to dissipate before reaching out to touch her face. Ian, I need to go back and take care of the matters in the capital. You stay by Manor Master Sima's side. Once everything is taken care of, I will send someone to pick you up. He spoke in a low voice, filled with longing and reluctance. If she wasn't pregnant with his flesh and blood, he would have kept her by his side no matter what. If he didn't need to put an end to those matters, he wouldn't have left them at this time. Afraid of waking her up, Xiao Su didn't say anything else. He only looked at her like an infatuated man, reluctant to part. When it was about time, he tucked her in before silently leaving again. Manor Master Sima, I'll leave Ian in your care. Xiao Su met Sima Jun after coming out of the tent and said sincerely. Sima Jun sighed in her heart. Such a proud and unyielding man was willing to lower his noble head for her good friend. This must be true love. She sighed in her heart, but it didn't stop her from agreeing. Don't worry, I won't let you down. Of course, she had to be able to keep him. Thank you. Sima Jun watched Xiao Su's departing figure and sensed someone approaching from behind. She scoffed and asked without turning her head, if you were the King of England, would you do the same? Are you saying that I would leave you behind and walk alone? The person behind her chuckled. That would only work if you were pregnant with my child. Sima Jun was speechless. She bent her elbow and stabbed behind her. The person behind her dodged nimbly and grabbed her elbow. She fell into his arms and couldn't break free. Be good and don't move. I'm thinking about how to answer. Ji Linyang dragged her up the tree trunk. The dense branches and leaves blocked their figures, making it very convenient for them to do bad things. Sima Jun was too lazy to move. She leaned in his arms and played with his black hair lazily. Answer me properly, or I won't go easy on you. Ji Linyang smiled. Let's make it clear first. Don't lose your temper. Sima Jun seemed to know that he wouldn't say anything nice. She raised her eyebrows but still nodded. If it were me, I would make the same decision as the King of England. I'm not the only one. I believe that any man would choose to do the same in such a situation. Sima Jun rolled her eyes in annoyance. Can't help it. Who would bear to let his pregnant wife follow him on a long journey? Ji Linyang shrugged. Do you want to hear my opinion? Ji Linyang's hand that was stroking her hair paused. It was rare to see her so serious. He smiled and said, I'm all ears. The King of England's return to the capital must have something to do with the old emperor. Do you think little Qingyan will want to be absent at such an important moment? Even if she is pregnant and needs to take care of the baby's health, she should at least have the right to know. If you make the decision for her without saying anything, even if you do it for her sake, do you think little Qingyan will accept it? Sima Jun said indignantly. She looked straight at him as if she had immersed herself in the role. The person in front of her was the detestable and self-righteous person. Ji Linyang hurriedly smiled. If we encounter the same situation in the future, I'll definitely tell you. Be good and don't be angry. Sima Jun was successfully appeased. A sly look flashed across her eyes. This was the effect she wanted. She wanted to see if he dared to make decisions on his own in the future. Happy, she leaned over and kissed him on the cheek. She chuckled and said, "That's a good boy." Ji Linyang's lips curved. How could he not know what she was thinking? He just adhered to the principle of not saying it out loud. The most important thing was to make his wife happy. Gentlemanly demeanor and manly dignity were not important. Since I'm so obedient, shouldn't you give me a reward? Ji Linyang didn't wait for her to respond. He hooked her body and leaned over to kiss her deeply. Meanwhile, a slender figure lifted the curtain of the tent under the tree and flashed past as fast as the wind. No one noticed. Chapter 1466. Xiao Su selected a group of men and horses and set off in the direction of the rising sun. They traveled for 3 days and 3 nights in such a rush. One day they stopped to rest. Xiao Su heard his subordinate report that the carriage following behind the group was still there. Xiao Su felt that something was wrong. He waved his hand to have Turin bring the people over. Soon the people were brought over. This group of people all wore black bamboo hats, except for the woman at the front, who wore a snow-white hat. "May I know why General has invited us here?" The person standing next to the woman who looked like an attendant was the first to speak. When Xiao Su heard the voice, his sharp gaze instantly fell on the silent woman. Then, it quickly turned into helplessness. He clasped his hands behind his back and said indifferently, "How long are you going to hide this from me?" When Chu Qingyan heard his words, she knew that she had been seen through. She puffed up her cheeks and took off the bamboo hat that covered her. She asked curiously, "I had Jin Xan and Su Yi follow behind me. The people around me were all unfamiliar faces. How did you guess that it was me?" Xiao Su saw that she didn't know her mistake at all and was still full of curiosity. He couldn't help but feel a headache coming on. He waved his hand to dismiss everyone. It was best not to let others see him discipline his wife. He walked in front of her. "Do you think there's anything on you that I can't recognize?" She blushed and raised her hand to hit his chest lightly. This indirectly told her that he didn't rely on others to recognize her, but because he recognized her. Xiao Su chuckled and held her fist. Then, he pulled her into his arms and sighed. "Why you here?" When this topic was brought up, Chu Qingyan's smile immediately disappeared. She put her hands on his chest and pushed hard to leave his embrace. She crossed her arms and looked at him with a half-smile. "May I ask His Royal Highness, how will the crime of abandoning his wife and child be dealt with?" Xiao Su's head started to hurt again. As expected, he couldn't avoid this question. "You're pregnant. I was afraid that your body wouldn't be able to take it. I didn't mean to keep you here." Abandoning his wife and child? He didn't dare to shoulder the responsibility, nor could he shoulder it. "It's understandable, but unforgivable," she said lightly and then turned to leave. "Where are you going?" Xiao Su quickly pulled her back. "You don't welcome me here, so of course I'll leave on my own. Otherwise, what if you send me back with the excuse that it's for my own good? My feet are my own, you can't do anything about it." She snorted and continued to walk forward. She had only taken 2 steps when she was pulled into an embrace. He had no choice but to compromise. "Since you're already here, how can I send you back?" This little fellow had deliberately rushed for a few days before giving herself away. Even if he was angry, he couldn't send her away with peace of mind. He could only feel at ease keeping her by his side. Chu Qingyan secretly gave him a thumbs up and then snuggled in his arms. "I missed you so much." At this time, he should give her some honey. Xiao Su found it a little funny when he heard that. This little guy was getting better at coaxing people. Since that was the case, he wouldn't hold back. After a long kiss, she hid in his arms and didn't come out. It looked like she was shy. During the break, all the accomplices stood in a row. The main culprit was holding a fruit and nibbling on it with a smile. The accomplices looked at each other. It seemed like they could only protect themselves. Ethereal was the first to speak. "Little Master is very healthy in Little Princess Consort's stomach. Even during the journey, he didn't show any discomfort. He's very obedient. It can be seen that he's a master that doesn't make people worry." Jin Xen followed up. "Recently, Little Princess Consort's appetite has been very good. Other than sour fruits, She also ate a lot of vegetarian and meat dishes. She ate at least 2 bowls of rice every meal. Hua Ling was unwilling to be left behind. There's a thick wool blanket in the carriage, so it's very stable. Even if she lies on it and rolls around, there won't be a problem. Xiao Su listened to them talk for a long time, but he didn't say anything or express his opinion. However, it could be felt that the cold air around him was slowly retreating. Thus, everyone persevered and told him everything that happened on the road. It's been hard on you. In the end, Xiao Su left these words and left. When the accomplices who had been prepared to be punished heard this, they instantly cried. "Mommy, they finally escaped." Hearing the cheers behind him, Xiao Su couldn't help but smile. He wasn't an unreasonable person. He knew that they had disobeyed his orders because of the little fellow. They had taken good care of her along the way, so it could be considered atonement. "You're not angry anymore?" Someone pulled on his sleeve. Xiao Su turned his head and saw a pair of bright and fawning eyes. He had a kind of realization that as long as she acted coquettishly towards him, even if he was full of anger, it would dissipate in an instant. He held her hand and slowly strolled on the grass. I can't even wait to dote on you. How could I bear to be angry with you? Moreover, compared to your smile, no amount of reprimand would yield to it. Then I'll accompany you back to the capital? Good. Hearing this, Chu Qingyan smiled happily. I didn't have the chance to accompany you when you experienced injustice in the past. This time, I don't want to be absent again. I didn't participate in your past, but I'll accompany you to the end in your present and future. After a few days of hurrying, when they stood outside the gates of the capital again, Chu Qingyan felt as if a lifetime had passed. She still remembered the last time she had passed by this place. She had been forced to flee. She had been in a very sorry state, and because of that incident, she had lost a close friend. Looking at the city gate in front of her, Chu Qingyan had mixed feelings. However, for the big ice cube, the feeling was even more complicated. Xiao Su stared at the endless road in front of him, and a kind of homesickness circled in his heart. His cold fingers suddenly touched a warm softness, and then that softness wrapped around his palm, and the warmth passed from his fingertips to the depths of his heart. He couldn't help but turn his head, only to meet those eyes that were filled with worry and encouragement. He suddenly realized that he wasn't alone this time. The corners of his mouth slowly rose, and his fingers regained their warmth. He firmly held her hand and walked inside. Let's go. Her heart that had been raised relaxed because of his words. Chu Qingyan smiled and nodded. Okay. Before reaching the capital, other than eating and sleeping, the group spent all their time on the road. Now that they were here, Xiao Su gave the order to abandon the carriage and walk. They disguised themselves as ordinary people and passed through the heavy traffic. No one recognized them as the valiant couple that had become famous in this short period of time. The road to the imperial palace wasn't long, but it still took some time. Chu Qingyan quietly accompanied him. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw the complicated emotions in his eyes. Every step was slow, as if he was thinking about the past. When they finally stopped at the gates of the imperial palace, Xiao Su tightened his grip on her hand and said disappointedly, 10 or 20 years isn't short, but the memories left to me here are more bleak than happy. It's okay. We still have a lifetime to experience happiness, and I will always be with you. She held his hand and raised a bright smile. Xiao Su returned a smile. Yes, I still have you and our child. Let's go and say goodbye to the past and then start over. She pulled his hand and said with a gentle smile. He nodded. The two slowly walked through the palace gates that had been opened for them. Chapter 1467. When they walked through the palace gates, everyone bowed respectfully to Xiao Su. Although Chu Qingyan was extremely shocked, she knew that now was not the time to ask questions. She lowered her head and followed him into the palace. Although she hadn't entered the palace many times, she still remembered every blade of grass and every tree here. She didn't know if it was because of her mentality or because it was late autumn, but she felt that everything in front of her had a bleak and somewhat oppressive feeling. Xiao Su held her hand tightly and asked in a low voice, "Are you not feeling well?" She had always admired the big ice cube's meticulous and sensitive mind. She shook her head lightly. "I'm fine." Xiao Su touched her face and hand. After finding that there was nothing wrong with her, he felt reassured and continued to lead her inside. When they reached the palace where the Sichuan emperor lived, a familiar figure appeared in their line of sight. When she saw the gentle expression on his face, Chu Qingyan suddenly felt a bit sad. After not seeing him for half a year, he seemed to have lost a lot of weight. If Zijing saw him like this, her heart would probably ache immensely. "Imperial brother, imperial sister-in-law, welcome back to the palace." Xiao Ho cupped his hands in greeting to the two with a warm and sincere smile. Xiao Su returned the greeting, a trace of a smile in his eyes. "It's been hard on you these days." "Imperial brother, what are you saying? This is what this younger brother wants to do." Xiao Ho waved his hand, then said, "I also have to congratulate imperial brother and imperial sister-in-law. Soon you will have a child. I can also be an uncle." There was a bit of envy, but more blessings. Chu Qingyan's face was slightly red. She lowered her head and gently stroked her belly. She replied, "It seems that the baby will be doted on by many people in the future." "Of course." Xiao Su hugged her waist as he spoke matter-of-factly. Xiao Ho smiled. Looking at the sky, he reminded her, "Consort Yu is in the palace feeding imperial father medicine. It's just the right time to go now." Although she didn't know what role Xiao Ho played in the Big Ice Cube's plan, she could guess a thing or two from their conversation. Chu Qingyan felt a lot closer to this gentle Xiao Ho than before. She did not know if it was because of Big Iceberg or because of Zijing's relationship with him. "Then let's go." Xiao Su's voice returned to normal as he said indifferently. Xiao Ho nodded and led the two to the palace. "How is he now?" "His illness is incurable, only his mind is still clear." Xiao Su's, but he didn't say anything. There was no obstruction along the way until they reached the door of the palace. Xiao Ho signaled to the guards, and the door opened. Xiao Ho extended his hand to invite them in. He didn't stride in until Xiao Su and Chu Qingyan had walked in. Consort Yu was feeding the emperor medicine. Her charming and gentle eyes flashed with malice. As long as the emperor drank this bowl of medicine, he would be able to die. Then her son would be able to successfully ascend the throne. From then on, she would be able to sleep peacefully. At that moment, a white light shone in from the door, then quickly disappeared. She frowned and turned around, but saw a group of people she didn't expect. "You, how did you get in? Someone come. Capture these traitors." Imperial concubine Moon immediately shrieked, pointing at them and angrily shouting. Sichuan Emperor, who was lying on the bed, struggled to open his half-closed eyes. When he saw Xiao Su and the others standing in front of him, his emotions fluctuated violently. "Xiao Su, you unfilial son. How dare you come back?" "Father, if eldest brother and the others don't come back soon, I'm afraid they won't make it in time to send you off." Xiao Ho, who was standing at the side, said gently with a faint smile. Sichuan Emperor and Consort Yu finally noticed Xiao Ho. Consort Yu hurriedly stroked Sichuan Emperor's violently heaving chest. She turned around and scolded, "Prince Yi, His Majesty has treated you well. How can you say such heart-wrenching words?" Xiao Ho chuckled and looked at Imperial Concubine Yu with eyes like torches. "Imperial Concubine Yu, I think no one knows better than you what has happened to Imperial Father's body." His words successfully froze Consort Yu. She twitched the corner of her mouth. "What are you talking about, Prince? I don't understand a word you said." Sichuan Emperor took a deep breath and glared at Xiao Ho. "You're also an unfilial son. Don't try to sow discord here. I didn't expect you to be a wolf in sheep's clothing. You're really an ungrateful wretch. How dare you team up with this evil creature? Guards, arrest these two unfilial sons." However, no one obeyed the order. Sichuan Emperor and Consort Yu finally realized the situation they were in. Sichuan Emperor's lips trembled. He stared at the people in front of him in disbelief. "What did you do?" Chu Qingyan stepped out from behind her big ice cube. She was surprised to see the emperor lying on the bed in such a terrible state. The person who used to be so domineering and oppressive to the big ice cube would one day end up in such a state. She had to admit that good and evil would eventually be repaid. Heaven's way of reincarnation. If you don't believe it, look up and see who will be spared by heaven. It's not what we did. It's what this good concubine in front of you did. If it wasn't for her help, I'm afraid we wouldn't have been able to take control of the imperial palace. Xiao Ho looked at the crazed emperor in front of him. He suddenly felt a sense of pleasure and coldness emerged in his eyes. Sichuan Emperor snorted coldly and looked at them with hatred. Without waiting for Sichuan Emperor to speak, Xiao Ho spoke to Consort Yu, who was curled up and trying to reduce her presence. Consort Yu, Imperial Father's illness was diagnosed by you. All of the medicine was personally brewed by you. Right now, we, as his sons, have some doubts about Imperial Father's illness. We want to ask if you dare to drink the medicine in your hand? I know that this medicine is used to nourish the body. It's fine for a normal person to drink it. Don't you think so? Consort Yu's hand trembled and she almost spilled the medicine on her hand. She suppressed her trembling and said, "Why should I drink it just because you say so? Xiao Ho, you're not sick at all, right? You've hidden it from His Majesty for so many years. What are your intentions?" Sichuan Emperor originally didn't believe that the person sleeping next to him would do anything to him, but other people didn't know. He was closest to Consort Yu. When he saw her trembling hand, his eyebrows jumped. He suddenly thought of everything that had happened since he started feeling unwell. His body instantly stiffened. He reached out to grab Consort Yu's hand and said sternly, "Drink it for Zhen to see." Consort Yu thought that she had successfully diverted attention to Xiao Ho, but she didn't expect Sichuan Emperor to suddenly grab her. She looked at him in a daze and then bit her lip in silence. Seeing her reaction, there was no need to verify anything. The last glimmer of hope was extinguished the moment Sichuan Emperor let go of her hand. "If Zhen has treated you well, I wish I could dig out my entire heart for you. Why did you do this?" Consort Yu's medicine bowl fell to the ground. The black soup covered the ground and the air was filled with a bitter smell. Chapter 1468. Consort Yu wanted to explain, but when she met the Sichuan Emperor's cold and hateful gaze, the gentleness on her face disappeared. All that was left was undisguised hatred. "You want to give me your heart? Then why did you make things difficult for the Fu family? Why didn't you make Ranner the crown prince? Why did you wait so long before marrying me into the palace?" Imperial concubine Moon hysterically screamed. She no longer had her usual gentle and kind appearance. At this time, it would be more appropriate to describe her as a shrew. Make things difficult for the Fu family? That was to help Ranner clean up those corrupt officials so that they would not become obstacles in his way in the future. Make her the crown prince? The draft of the crown prince's edict was in the imperial study, but he had not found the right time. Marrying her into the palace was because his foundation was not stable. He could not compete with the Liang family and give her stability. Unfortunately, he did not have the strength to explain these answers, and she probably would not listen. At this time, a figure rushed into the hall. The guards following closely behind her looked at Xiao Ho with self-blame. When Xiao Ho saw who it was, he looked at his imperial brother beside him. In the end, he waved his hand for the guards to leave and leave the person behind. All of this happened too quickly. Before Chu Qingyan could react, Empress Liang appeared. At this time, she had lost her previous glamour. Although her clothes were still gorgeous, they could not hide the age on her face. In the short time that they had not seen each other, she had aged more than 10 years. She did not look at the people present. Instead, she walked step by step toward the dragon bed. Under the Sichuan Emperor's stunned gaze, she stood a few steps away from him and looked at him in a daze. In the end, she laughed helplessly, self-deprecating and sorrowful. After laughing enough, Empress Liang pointed at Consort Yu and shook her head at the Sichuan Emperor. She said softly, "Your Majesty, look. You would rather give your heart to this vicious woman than look at me." Sichuan Emperor looked at her in a daze. Empress Liang continued, if I hadn't met you, I wouldn't have dragged the Liang family onto your boat. If I hadn't met you, there would be no harem fighting, no concubines fighting for favor. I would still be that carefree Liang Yuan. There would still be blue skies and grasslands. I could wield my sword, drink my wine and ride my horse. But there are no ifs in life. I turned against the person I loved the most, and I forced my child to never see him again. Xiao Yuelang. Hearing her call his name, Sichuan Emperor looked at her deeply with trembling lips. If I could restart my life, I would never want to meet you again. Empress Liang laughed until tears came out of her eyes. Empress. Without waiting for Sichuan Emperor to say anything, Empress Liang turned around and staggered out of the hall. He had never said anything to her before, so there was no need to say anything now. When she walked to Xiao Su's side, she smiled bitterly. Child, I'm sorry. Xiao Su bowed his head, and his face turned pale in an instant. Chu Qingyan held his hand with heartache. Xiao Su turned to smile at her and comforted her. After speaking, Empress Liang slowly walked out of the hall like a wandering soul. On a spring trip, apricot blossoms blew all over my head. Which family's young man is so romantic? This concubine intends to marry you for the rest of my life. Even if I'm heartlessly abandoned, I can't be embarrassed. She still remembered that day when he stood under the tree with the apricot blossoms blowing all over his shoulders. It was so moving. Now that she thought about it, it was probably just a trap for him to win over the Liang family. Forget it, let's just leave it at that. When Xiao Yao received the news and appeared in the hall, he just happened to brush past Empress Liang's departing figure. He didn't stop walking to his two brothers' side. When he saw Sichuan Emperor's lonely and aged appearance, he couldn't help but be shocked. In the end, he could only sigh softly. The West Xian Emperor stared blankly at Empress Liang's departing figure. He suddenly thought of many things. That girl's smile was as bright as a flower, her unrestrained and carefree personality. He didn't know when she had started to change, but the root of it all was still his fault. Looking at the concubine he had doted on his entire life and the 3 sons he had neglected, Sichuan Emperor's heart suddenly felt powerless. The woman he had loved his entire life had mercilessly pointed a sharp blade at him in the end. And the woman he had neglected his entire life had been hurt the most by him in the end. He had never looked at his sons properly, but now they had grown to the point that he couldn't recognize them. Only now did Sichuan Emperor realize that his life had been such a failure. Consort Yu had already been dragged away by Xiao Su. Only the father and son were left in the hall. It wasn't easy for you to hide it from us for so many years. Now, all of this has something to do with you. The West Xian Emperor looked at him coldly. Xiao Ho coldly laughed. Just now, Consort Yu asked me what my intentions were. I did have one. Most likely, it was to avenge my imperial mother and my Luo clan. Sichuan Emperor wasn't surprised. He bitterly smiled, so you knew. Although we let your imperial mother down, we don't regret it. Xiao Ho coldly smiled but didn't say anything. Sichuan Emperor turned to look at Xiao Yao. Although he didn't care much about this child, he at least cared about him. Why did you do this? All these years of fooling around with women was just a smokescreen. Xiao Yao glanced at him and self-mockingly said, Imperial father, if I didn't do this, I would have become a thorn in your side like eldest brother, right? You only have 4th imperial brother in your eyes. When have we brothers ever existed? If you weren't so biased, I wouldn't have become a prodigal son who couldn't return to his home even though he had one. Sichuan Emperor choked. At this time, in the face of his own flesh and blood's complaints, he also began to doubt the things he had done in his life. Xiao Ho and Xiao Yao took one last look at the person on the bed, then prepared to leave the inner hall to their eldest brother. Xiao Su looked up at them. You're not going to say anything else? Xiao Ho bitterly shook his head. There's nothing else to say. Xiao Yao also silently shook his head. At this time, not adding insult to injury was already the most benevolent thing they could do to their biological father. Xiao Su nodded, and the two of them walked out of the bedchamber without looking back. Sichuan Emperor felt embarrassed and sad that his 2 sons didn't want to leave. He had been so harsh on them in the past, and now it seemed that he didn't have the face to ask them to stay to accompany him in his final days. From just now until now, she had witnessed scene after scene of the imperial family's secrets. Chu Qingyan felt that her brain capacity wasn't enough. When she saw Sichuan Emperor look at them, she subconsciously grasped the hand of the person next to her. Xiao Su lowered his head and said softly to her, "Go outside and wait for me. I'll be out in a moment." Chu Qingyan was a bit worried, but under his reassurance, she reluctantly nodded. She tightly grasped his hand and said seriously, "Okay, the baby and I will wait for you outside." Xiao Su held her hand and personally led her out of the bedchamber before walking back. "Su, do you hate Imperial Father?" When Xiao Su walked back to his original spot, he heard this question with a sigh echoing in the hall. Chapter 1469. Xiao Su was a bit absent-minded when he heard this word. At first, he probably hated him, but when he wanted to kill him, he didn't hate him anymore. Perhaps it was because he found the warmth of his life and couldn't bear to waste time on someone who didn't matter to him. "I don't hate him," he said indifferently. Upon hearing this answer, the Sichuan Emperor was both surprised and somewhat understanding. The sunlight outside the window shone on him, making him radiant in a way that he didn't have. The light in his eyes dimmed, and he said indifferently, "Then what do you want to say to me?" "I have nothing to say." Xiao Su flatly refused. The Sichuan Emperor was stunned, and then he heard him say, "I thought you had something to say to me." The Sichuan Emperor laughed sinisterly. Su, do you know what I dislike about you the most? You're too calm, so calm that it's frightening. It's normal for an adult to have such a temperament, but back then, you were still a teenager who wasn't even 10 years old, so I had to guard against you." Xiao Su remained silent. He could somewhat understand how his two brothers felt, even though they had a lot to say, but in the end, they couldn't say it. In the face of such a person, those words had lost their desire to speak, and they had lost their meaning. "If there's nothing else to say, then I'll take my leave," he said calmly, as if he didn't see the hatred in the Sichuan Emperor's eyes. At this point, there was nothing to care about. The Sichuan Emperor frowned and wanted to say something, but the palace door opened again, and an old man walked in. Imperial Father? Imperial Grandfather. No one expected that the retired emperor would return at this time. The retired emperor nodded at Xiao Su, and his gaze finally fell on his haggard son on the bed. A trace of love and pity flashed through his eyes, and then he waved his hand at the person beside him. "Su, you can leave first. Let Imperial Grandfather and your Imperial Father have a few words." Xiao Su nodded. The moment he turned around, he suddenly said, "Let's go. I've never coveted Sichuan's empire. Even now, I still don't have any thoughts of becoming an emperor. As for your wariness towards me, to me, it is truly too baffling and also too laughable." With that, he strode out of the room and closed the door behind him. Sichuan Emperor's fingers were white as he clutched the brocade quilt. Only the father and son were left in the hall. "Did you hear what Su'er said? You idiot!" The retired emperor scolded in exasperation. Sichuan Emperor looked at his father sitting in front of him. Hearing that familiar name, a trace of hope flashed across his face. "Father, have you come back to save I?" The retired emperor shook his head. The light in Sichuan Emperor's eyes slowly dimmed. "Yu Lang, do you know your mistake now?" Sichuan Emperor looked at him blankly. "Father, please enlighten me." Seeing him like this, the retired emperor knew that he still hadn't realized his mistake. He sighed softly. "You're too self-centered, too conceited, and too short-sighted. Su-er is an intelligent child, but he's also a child who can take on great responsibilities. Since he was young, he has regarded you as his goal to strive for, not to fight for power and the throne, but because he respects and worships you, his father. But what have you done? Just because of a Taoist priest's nonsense, you really believe that Su-er will endanger your empire? That's too laughable. Where have all the books you've read for so many years gone? He's the eldest son of the first wife and will inherit your empire sooner or later. Moreover, so what if your son is more outstanding than you in the future? As a father, shouldn't you feel proud? You're too selfish. You only want to suppress Su-er, but in the end, aren't you harmed by the concubine you've spoiled? The retired emperor mercilessly exposed the thin layer of window. You're jealous that Su-er is smarter than you, and that's why you've ended up like this. Yu Lang, you've disappointed father too much. Sichuan emperor's face turned even paler. It was as if the purpose he had concealed for half his life had been exposed in broad daylight. He couldn't find a reason to refute it, and he couldn't refute it because it was the truth. What did he mean by wanting Xiao Ran to inherit his throne because he doted on imperial concubine Yu? He just wanted to use this reason as a cover for his goal. He originally thought that he would take this secret to the grave, but he didn't expect that father had already seen through him. Seeing his son's pale and bloodless appearance after being tortured to this state, the retired emperor couldn't help but soften his tone. Yu Lang, do you know why father wanted to send the young Su-er to the military camp? It was because he was afraid that father and son would turn against each other in the end, so he sent him far away. He didn't want you to do anything to hurt him, but you still didn't give up. In the end, father betrothed the little girl from the Chu family to him so that you would let him go. Unfortunately, you weren't satisfied and went from bad to worse. Do you know that what you're most afraid of in this world will happen? No matter how much you try to stop it, gold will always shine. Yu Lang, it's not that father doesn't want to save you, but that father has saved you too many times. This time, it was you who pushed yourself into the abyss. If you had been a good emperor, a good husband, and a good father, you wouldn't have ended up like this today. You're too muddle-headed, Sichuan emperor stammered, his face full of regret. Father, I was wrong. I know that I was wrong. He recalled Empress Liang's words just now, and tears suddenly streamed down his face. If he could do it all over again, he hoped that from the day he met her, he wouldn't go down the wrong path again. When the retired emperor opened the door to the hall, he seemed to have suddenly aged a lot. Your father has passed away. One of the most painful things in life was to see one's child die before one's own. He loved his son dearly, otherwise, he wouldn't have passed the throne to him. Unfortunately, Sichuan emperor's death was reasonable for those in the know, but for those who didn't know, it was unexpected. That emperor who made people resent him left just like that? Chu Qingyan was stunned, and then followed the people around her to kneel down. In the past, she always said that she wanted to avenge the big ice cube, but now that he was really gone, her heart was at a loss. This person, whether rich or poor when he was alive, didn't he end up with a cup of yellow soil in the end? At this time, the retired emperor handed a bright yellow imperial edict to the eunuch beside him. The eunuch immediately unfolded it and read, "The King of England, Xiao Su, has a kind and generous character, and is very much like Zhen. His determination can't be taken away, and his heart can't be moved by great confusion. Zhen wishes to pass the throne to the King of England, Xiao Su. All the princes should work together as one to support the new emperor. Important officials should wholeheartedly assist the ruler and support the country together. Here it is." At the end of the speech, everyone cheered in unison. Xiao Su took the imperial edict, and the retired emperor walked in front of him. He patted his shoulder and said earnestly, "I didn't expect that there would be a day when imperial grandfather would pass the throne for the second time. You have to take good care of the country that your father emperor didn't protect well. Don't disappoint your ancestors." Xiao Su nodded, and the retired emperor left with his hands behind his back in satisfaction. At this time, Xiao Su held the little fellow's hand and lowered his head to give her a gentle and doting smile. "In the future, I'll have to trouble you to accompany me in this deep palace." Chu Qingyan returned a sweet smile. "It's my honor. It's my fortune to meet you." Chapter 1470. For Chu Qingyan, everything that had happened in this period of time was like a dream. Yet, when she woke up, she was told that everything was real. The Sichuan emperor had passed away, and the new emperor had been confirmed. But everything was not over. The funeral of the Sichuan emperor, the audience of the court officials, Xiao ran and the soldiers in his hands were still a hidden danger, and the Liang and Fu parties involved in the case had not been completely dealt with. Everything seemed to be just the beginning. Ever since Xiao Su received the imperial edict that day, he began to work like a spinning top. His feet did not touch the ground during the day, and when he returned at night, it was close to midnight. When she woke up, the blanket was still warm, but he was no longer there. Every time, she did her best to keep her eyes open and wait for him to come back, but she was already pregnant. Before she could wait for him, she would fall asleep. When Xiao Su heard the reports from Jean Xian and the others, his heart ached for his little one. But every time he wanted to find time to come back and accompany her, a new pile of things was placed in front of him, hindering his steps and making it difficult for him to split himself. The more it was like this, the more he missed her. But he could only rely on the little time he had to sleep at night to properly hold her in his arms and relieve the pain of lovesickness. This could be considered a reward for his busy day and the motivation for a new day. That night, Xiao Su returned to the palace. This was not the palace where the emperor lived. Because of the unhappy memories of the past, Xiao Su found another place with a quiet environment that was suitable for the little one to nurture the fetus. Tonight, he was 2 hours earlier than usual. Xiao Su quietly walked into the hall and had all the palace servants leave. It was already late autumn, and the night was starting to get cold. He took off his clothes and shoes. After the cold on his body dissipated, he quietly climbed onto the bed, afraid that he would wake the person sleeping. However, the person on the bed was not asleep. She turned around and stared at him accusingly with a pair of large eyes. Chu Qingyan was already 3 months pregnant, and her belly was starting to show. However, compared to other women who would gain weight during pregnancy, she was becoming more and more delicate. Her cheeks were thin, making her eyes even larger and making her charm even more charming. Her white face was rosy and glossy, and even her small pouting mouth was especially moist and attractive. It had been almost half a month since they had been intimate. When Xiao Su saw her delicate and lovely appearance, he did not care that she was accusing him. He picked her up from the bed and held her in his arms. He lowered his head and accurately covered her lips, impatiently invading her teeth. Once he touched her softness, the longing of the past few days, like a turbulent river, boiled in his blood, as if it was about to explode. Chu Qingyan's mind was a blank. She did not react. She clearly wanted to criticize him. How did it turn out like this? She tried to lightly push him, but he hugged her even tighter. She was a bit helpless, but she also felt sorry for him. If she continued to be coy, it would be unreasonable. Thus, she changed from pushing to hugging. Her hands hooked around his neck and found a better position for herself. He had misgivings that she was pregnant, so he did not want to go too far. He prepared to release her, but at this time, the little fellow's response made his blood, which was already clamoring fiercely, unable to stop. The action of attacking the city began to shift from top to bottom. When Chu Qingyan was gasping for breath, she found that she was not wearing a single thread. In her shock, she just happened to see the culprit pull her doo-doo to the side. She felt that her face was about to be cooked. She could not help but pull the brocade quilt over her body in an attempt to cover her body. She pulled it once, but it did not move. She pulled it again, but it still did not move. She looked over in confusion and saw that the corner of the quilt was firmly held in his hand. She was ashamed and angry. She was ready to vent her anger on him, but when she looked up, she met with a pair of fiery eyes. That heat seemed to be contagious, making her whole body hot. She quickly looked away and coughed softly. "Give the quilt back to me." Her snow-white skin was tinged with red, and in the warm firelight, it emitted a faint luster. Her hair hung down, black and smooth, hanging over her shoulders, half covering her graceful and enchanting body. Chu Qingyan, who turned her head away, did not notice her appearance at this time. She wanted to say something, but she did not, which made his throat even more thirsty. The light in Shenmo's eyes dimmed a little, and his voice was imperceptibly hoarse. "Not giving it back. Give it back to me. Not giving it back." Back and forth, no one moved, but the atmosphere in the bed did not cool down. Instead, the temperature rose. Chu Qingyan could not bear it anymore. She turned her head, wanting to argue with him. However, just as she was about to move, she caught a glimpse of a huge shadow coming towards her from the corner of her eye. She blinked, and before she could react, the world spun around her. Her back was already pressed against the bed, and the shadow in front of her enveloped her, trapping her tightly within an inch of his chest. She opened her eyes, and that handsome face came into her sight. His eyebrows were like green feathers, his skin was like white jade, and his whole body had a noble aura. In the eyes of others, he was unattainable, but in front of her, he was like an ordinary man who had been pulled down from the altar. He endured, was in pain, but also looked forward to it. He bent down and whispered in her ear, "Give it to me?" She opened her mouth slightly as if she was shocked by his words. However, under his burning gaze, she gradually regained her composure. She bit her lip and was so shy that she didn't know what to do. However, she was moved by his respect for her when he suppressed the desire in his heart and didn't want to disregard her wishes. When the two of them were so close, she could feel the tension in his body and the shocking heat on his skin. She could feel the pain he was enduring. Finally, she tilted her head slightly, not daring to look at him, and whispered, "After the first 3 months of danger, it's okay, but you have to be careful." Her voice was as soft as a mosquito, but it was nothing to Xiao Su, who had excellent hearing. He frowned slightly when he heard what she said, and after he understood what she said, his eyes bloomed with dazzling surprise and excitement. Not long after she finished speaking, she felt as if she was wrapped in a ball of flame, and her whole body was about to burn. She also felt as if she was in the ocean, and she could only tightly hug the person in front of her and bear his waves of passion. From the beginning, it was turbulent and surging. To the end, it was gentle, slow, and gentle. All kinds of patterns were changing. Men who were abstinent were scary, and men who were abstinent after not seeing each other for a long time were even scarier. At this moment, Chu Qingyan deeply experienced it, and she couldn't help but cry in her heart. At the last moment, fireworks exploded in her mind. She seemed to see him lowering his head and devoutly and gently kissing her slightly bulging belly. That was the happiness of being pitted and spoiled. "Big ice cube," she whispered softly. "I'm here." Xiao Su replied gently. "I miss you so much," she said unconsciously. "I know." "How do you know?" "Because I miss you too." They were only separated by a few walls, but it was enough to make her yearn for him. Chapter 1471. It was late at night and the night breeze was chilly. Inside the room, after a sweaty workout, she did not feel cold at all. But Xiao Su still carefully wrapped her in the blanket and pulled her into his embrace. Chu Qingyan wanted him not to be so cautious, but under his serious gaze, she let him do as he pleased. "Are you thirsty? Do you want to drink some water?" Because of the weather and her pregnancy, there was always warm water in the hall. Seeing that he was about to get up to pour some water, Chu Qingyan immediately grabbed his hand and shook her head. "No need, I'm not thirsty. Lie down and accompany me." Xiao Su withdrew his foot and hugged her again. He lowered his head and kissed her on the top of her head. Then he smiled and said, "All right, as you wish." People who had eaten and drank their fill were very easy to talk to. Chu Qingyan snorted. Although he was worried about the baby in her stomach, he had so many tricks up his sleeves that when she thought about it, she wanted to grab the blanket and cover her face. But she did not forget that she still had important things to do. "Humph, you've been so busy recently that you don't even want your wife and child? Tell me, are you seeing someone outside?" She wanted to grab his collar out of habit, but unfortunately, she could only touch his bare skin. Moreover, it was very elastic and made her heart ripple. As this thought flashed through her mind, the heat that had just subsided from her face returned. She coughed lightly and wanted to withdraw her hand, but he caught it. She raised her head and saw his smile that was not a smile, as if she had nowhere to hide in front of him. "Is my wife satisfied with what you see?" He placed her hand on his lips and kissed it. Then he looked at her seriously, as if he was sincerely asking for her opinion. Chu Qingyan felt as if she was about to burst into flames. Of course, she was not angry. Her eyelids twitched. How could he be so serious about this? Was he still the cold and aloof big ice cube from back then? I'm talking to you seriously, don't always change the topic. She pushed him lightly and forcefully changed the topic. She was afraid that he would say something that would make her blush and her heart race. However, she felt a warmth on her chest. She heard him say, "Ian, your heart is beating so fast." His innocent words and impure touch made her want to grab the blanket and cover herself. Just as she was about to go crazy, a low chuckle came from above her head. Then, she fell into his broad embrace again. "Alright, I won't tease you anymore. Whatever you want to know, your husband will tell you everything he knows." Beside her ear was his carefree laughter after he was satisfied. Chu Qingyan raised her hand and pinched his waist in annoyance. "Who asked you to tease me? Who asked you to touch me in the future? No way. But he wouldn't be able to eat meat in the future." For a young and strong man who had just tasted meat, this was simply torture. Xiao Su had a bad feeling and immediately expressed, "It's enough to have you in the family. Moreover, you're the only one in my eyes. Everyone else is just a flower in my eyes. There's no chance of them catching my eye." Although she did not show it on her face, Chu Qingyan's heart was still filled with joy. However, Xiao Su could still feel that he had successfully pacified the little fellow. He continued to tell her what he had been busy with during this period of time. With the death of the Xixin emperor, there was a great deal of work for him to deal with. He had to clean up the spies in the imperial palace, tidy up the harem, and then deal with the funeral. He could not be careless in any of these matters. Although he had the imperial edict of succession and was perfectly justified, everything he did now was in the eyes of the people of the world. There was no room for error. There were even more matters in the imperial court. The case of the Liang and Fu families had a wide range of implications. Every time a problem was uncovered, a chain of people would be implicated. It could be said that this was the biggest corruption case since the Sichuan dynasty. Although the alliance of the three kingdoms had collapsed, the imperial court had not completely taken over the dozen cities that had been previously occupied. They were currently cleaning up the scattered remnants. The invasion of the three kingdoms had been extremely cruel and ruthless. Basically, every city had been severely damaged. Not only did they have to settle the displaced people, they also had to stabilize the city. There were many things waiting to be done. Now, on Xiao Ran's side, including the soldiers sent by the Sichuan emperor, he had at least 80,000 soldiers. In the battle with Wulin, they had suffered a crushing defeat. However, Xiao Ran had made a prompt decision to retreat and avoid pursuit. Now, he was entrenched in the Great Plains in the north. Using the geographical advantage, he was engaged in a tug-of-war with Xiao Su's army, eyeing the capital like a tiger eyeing its prey. Now that everything is settled, Xiao Ran, that child, is really stubborn. Chu Qingyan leaned in his arms and shook her head. Xiao Su stroked her black hair and continued, "Actually, after we left, Xiao Ran had already planned to fight to the death with our people. According to the plan, they would have been exhausted in less than half a month. However, he did not expect that when the emperor had just died and the palace was in chaos, Consort Yu would take advantage of the chaos to escape. She even sent a message to Xiao Ran. That was why Xiao Ran reacted so quickly, retreating in order to advance." Hearing this, Chu Qingyan couldn't help but think of that day in the Sichuan emperor's bedchamber, the crazed and savage Consort Yu. Then she thought of the first time she met Xiao Ran, the Xiao Ran that she played with, the Xiao Ran that sent her out of the capital, the Xiao Ran that she met 5 years later, the Xiao Ran that gave her 5 years of trinkets, and finally the Xiao Ran that asked her why she couldn't like him. She had always thought that it was because people were fickle. Now that she thought about it, he had been influenced by his mother. If it wasn't for someone constantly fanning the flames by his ears and leading him down the wrong path, given his nature, he wouldn't have ended up like this today. She told her thoughts to the big ice cube and sighed. Xiao Su was silent for a while and then said faintly, "At birth, people are inherently good, but how many people in this world are good? He can't stay true to his heart. If his heart was firm, he wouldn't be so easily influenced by others. Chu Qingyan deeply agreed. That's right, he can't blame anyone else. As she spoke, she lowered her head and stroked her belly. She said in a low voice, "In the future, we have to educate our baby well. Don't let him go down the wrong path and be an upright person." He held her hand and she leaned into his embrace. She heard him say, "You should be a smart and strong person. Only then can you protect yourself and the people most important to you." She nodded with curved eyes and said in her heart, "Baby, you have to be a smart and strong man like your papa." The unborn baby had a helpless expression. He hadn't been born yet, but his father and mother had placed such high hopes on him. How could he have a happy childhood? Baby's heart was bitter, but baby didn't say it. The dead of night was suitable for rest and recuperation, but it was also suitable for doing some shameful things. A bright yellow imperial edict was delivered to Xiao Ran, but the contents were not the same as the one that Xiao Su had received. Chapter 1472. Child, this is what your imperial father left for you. A choked voice came from behind Xiao Ran. Xiao Ran turned around and his eyes fell on the person who had come. It was his imperial mother. "Imperial mother, what do you want to say?" He had been fighting for the past few days and hadn't had a good rest. His clear voice was a bit hoarse and his young and handsome face was weather-beaten. The light in his eyes had been worn away and was replaced with a calm steadiness. Consort Yu's hand that was wiping the corners of her eyes paused. She raised her head to look at her son in a daze. It had only been half a year, but her son seemed to have changed. It was different from when her son had just grown up. She felt that the two of them were so close, but there was an invisible wall separating them. "Ranner, what's wrong? Why are you looking at Imperial Mother like this?" Xiao Ran stared at her for a while. He sighed in his heart and then wiped his face to make it look as gentle as possible. Recently, bad news had come one after another. He was always tense and had forgotten what it felt like to smile. "I'm probably too tired." This explanation made Consort Yu let out a sigh of relief. As expected, he was still her child and hadn't changed. Thinking of this, Consort Yu's face became sorrowful. Her finger trembled as she pointed at the imperial edict in his hand. "Ranner, look, your imperial father has already decided to make you the crown prince. How could he give the throne to that traitor in the end? He must have given a fake imperial edict. That throne is yours, Shixian is yours, you are the most ideal successor to the throne in your imperial father's heart. So what does Imperial Mother want I to do?" Xiao Ran frowned as he looked at the person in front of him. Consort Yu didn't notice that something was wrong with her son. She let go of the handkerchief and reached out to grab his sleeve. She said in a sorrowful voice, "Ranner, you have to take back the throne. Don't let your imperial father's efforts go to waste. If the country falls into Xiao Su's hands, your imperial father will die with regrets. You can't disappoint him." Xiao Ran's emotions didn't fluctuate because of her words. He stared at her and said in an emotionless voice, "Imperial Mother, is Imperial Father's illness related to you?" These words were like a bucket of cold water being poured over her head, stopping Consort Yu from speaking. She raised her head and looked at Xiao Ran in shock. "Ranner, what do you mean by this?" "Imperial Mother, I don't have any other meaning. I just want to know why Imperial Father suddenly fell ill when he was in the Imperial Palace. You have always been inseparable from Imperial Father in the Imperial Palace. You must know why. Also, Imperial Father's illness was so serious. Why didn't you tell I?" Xiao Ran asked word by word as he stared at the person in front of him. He didn't want to miss a single reaction from her. These words were too unexpected. Consort Yu panicked a bit before she managed to calm herself down. She looked at him calmly. "Ranner, you suspect me?" However, there was no need for further proof. The answer was obvious from the emotions that Imperial Mother had unintentionally revealed. Xiao Ran stumbled back 2 steps. The calmness in his eyes disappeared. He looked with pain at the person in front of him who was as gentle as before but whose heart had changed beyond recognition. He said in a low voice, "Imperial Mother, Do you really think that I doesn't know anything? I may be stupid, but I'm not stupid to this extent. Imperial Father has treated us so well. Why did you do this to him? Consort Yu froze and her face turned white. She didn't think that he would find out. Imperial Mother knows that His Majesty treats us well, but he still made a move against the Fu family. He knew that you would rely on them in the future, that they were Imperial Mother's family, but he still heartlessly stripped them of all their positions and threw them into prison. Ranner, do you know? Your Imperial Father didn't plan on letting your maternal grandfather's family go. Everyone says that the Imperial family is the most heartless. This saying is indeed true. Consort Yu took off her gentle exterior. Her face was twisted and painful as she screamed at Xiao Ran. She didn't look like the beautiful Imperial consort at all. Xiao Ran was stunned. It was the first time he had seen Imperial Mother reveal such an expression. It was so strange and terrifying. But even if it was like this, you shouldn't have done this to him. If he hadn't protected us wholeheartedly, we would have been swallowed up by the dark harem. These words struck Consort Yu's heart. She suddenly calmed down. She didn't look like she was baring her fangs and brandishing her claws. She looked as if she had lost her soul after being pulled out of the water. She raised her hands to cover her face and sobbed, I didn't know that he was planning on making you the crown prince. If I saw the imperial edict earlier, I wouldn't have acted so quickly. There would still be a chance to save everything. He didn't say. Xiao Ran's blood seemed to freeze. His most beloved imperial mother had caused the death of his most respected imperial father. This was such a despairing truth. Love was gone, familial love was gone. In a single night he seemed to have lost everything. Consort Yu's face was covered in tears. She raised her head to look at the bright yellow silk in her son's hand. It was as if she had seen a ray of light in the boundless emptiness. She threw herself at Xiao Ran and tightly hugged his hand. She said emotionally, Ranner, Imperial Mother knows that she was wrong. If everything could be redone, Imperial Mother definitely wouldn't have harmed your Imperial Father. Now, it's too late to say anything, but we can't let your Imperial Father die with regrets. At that time, your Imperial Father was seriously ill, but it wasn't to the point of no return. He spent his last moments with Xiao Su. Perhaps your Imperial Father was... Consort Yu had twisted the truth. At that time, Sichuan Emperor's illness had reached the point of no return. All of this had been caused by her own hands. Xiao Ran's hands trembled. His gaze was unfocused as he looked at her. You're saying that the one who caused Imperial Father's death was Imperial Brother? Who else could it be? Consort Yu guiltily looked away from her son's gaze. She said in a hateful tone, Your Imperial Father wanted to make you the crown prince, so how could he change his mind and make him the new emperor before his death? If he didn't use some tricks, how could he have the chance to sit on the throne? Xiao Ran lowered his head. His hands slowly clenched into fists as pain appeared on his face. Consort Yu thought that he had understood and continued, There's one more thing that Imperial Mother thinks you need to know. What is it? Xiao Ran indifferently said. Chu Qingyan is pregnant. According to the time, it's already been more than 3 months. Consort Yu looked at him and slowly said, As expected, she saw his entire aura change. His entire person was filled with pain and sorrow. A trace of coldness flashed through her eyes. This Chu Qingyan was a disaster, but now she could be used. Ranner, we still have people in our hands. Go and take back what belongs to you. Xiao Ran pursed his lips. A trace of sorrow flashed through his eyes. In the end, he nodded in agreement. All right. No one knew how much despair he felt at this moment, but there was still a trace of light in his heart. Chapter 1473. Time slowly passed. Xiao Su was still busy with court matters and Chu Qingyan was still peacefully nurturing her fetus. She didn't know if it was because of Xiao Su's arrangements, but no one came to disturb her. She ate and slept all day, slept and ate all day. She also flirted with her family's big ice block. Her days were very enjoyable. Xiao Su was afraid that she would be lonely in the palace, so he brought Chu Mu's mother over to accompany her. With Chu Mu's mother and the chattering Xining, the large palace became much livelier. Today, Jasper was also sent back. It's been hard on you. Chu Qingyan leaned back in her chair and smiled as she looked at the person kneeling in front of her. Jasper stood up and her normally serious face revealed a happy smile. It's not hard. This is what this subordinate should do. After that was brought back to the palace, there was no news for a long time. Jasper temporarily joined Water Spirit's people to help. After she reunited with Big Ice Block, Jasper was sent to another place and only came back today. You came back from the outside, so you must know a lot of news. Tell me what's going on outside? Big Ice Block didn't like her to worry, so he always picked some good news to tell her. But she knew that there weren't so many things that went smoothly. Now that Jasper came back, she could ask her about it. But before Jasper came back, Xiao Su had told her that for her master's health, she could only pick some unimportant things to report. For example, those cities had been taken back. Under Xiao Su's governance, they had slowly returned to their former prosperity and the citizens had a place to return to. Chu Qingyan listened with great interest. At this time, a little eunuch ran in. Princess Consort, the Hua family's young master is asking for an audience. Although Xiao Su had not yet succeeded the throne, all of this was already set in stone. Chu Qingyan was the only woman by the future emperor's side. Furthermore, she was pregnant. Seeing how the future emperor was treating her like the apple of his eye, Chu Qingyan knew that the position of mistress of the imperial harem was almost certain. No one could surpass her. Most importantly, she was a beautiful and kind lady who had never made things difficult for anyone in the palace. Therefore, in the entire palace, no one was disrespectful to Chu Qingyan. Everyone wanted to curry favor with her. However, in the palace where Chu Qingyan lived, all the servants were personally selected by Xiao Su. Other than the eunuchs, the palace maids were all female riders of the Shaolai cavalry. Not just anyone could enter. This little eunuch was called Xiao because he had a clean background and was clever and sensible, which was why Xiao Su let him in. Xiao naturally knew that this person was the favorite of the new emperor, so he had to listen to him and didn't dare to be disloyal. At this moment, he stood there respectfully with his head bowed and said. When Chu Qingyan heard this name, she could not hide the pleasant surprise in her eyes. Quickly send it in. Xiao immediately turned around to send the message. It could be seen that this guest was important to the empress, so he had to properly greet her. This palace is truly blinding my eyes. Chi, it's all made of gold. Ah, it really is a golden house hiding a mistress. Hearing the voice before seeing the person, there was no one else who could speak like this. She was only 3-4 months pregnant, so it did not affect her movements. Chu Qingyan stood up to greet her. When she heard this, she couldn't help smiling. If you like it, I'll have your Sir Lin build you one. Hua Xiao walked over to hold her hand. Hearing this, she rolled her eyes. With his personality, he's so stingy. It's good enough that I don't starve to death, let alone build a golden house? If I go back and have a dream, it might come true. Chu Qingyan knew that she was exaggerating. She loved her Sir Lin too much, so how could she bear to mock him? It was just that he was not in front of her, so she was just talking. She wanted to take revenge for being bullied by him. Just as expected, that's right, Hua Xiao blinked her eyes and shook her good friend's sleeve. She smiled mischievously and fawningly. That's right, that one in your family will be the emperor in the future. Can you talk to him and have him raise my family's salary a bit? Otherwise, with his meager salary, how will he support his family in the future? Chu Qingyan imitated her earlier chi, and looked at her with a smile that was not a smile. Weren't you disdainful just now? Why is your heart aching now? But I can't do the things of an evil concubine, so you should put away these thoughts. Hua Xiao let go of her sleeve and sat down by herself. She looked like the world was degenerating with each passing day. Sure enough, after turning over, you don't recognize people anymore. My heart is sad, but no one knows my sorrow. Xining at the side laughed. Young Master Hua, in Jiangnan, if you dare to say that you don't have money, then no one dares to say that they have money. Hua Xiao looked like she was sad for her misfortune and angry for her failure to fight. You little girl, you've learned how to make fun of people from your master. Be careful, or I'll have your master directly wrap you up and send you to Gene Exin, so that you won't be an eyesore in front of me. These words successfully made Xining blush. She stomped her feet and immediately hid behind Jasper, causing everyone to burst into laughter. Gene Exin was now the commander of the Imperial Guards and was responsible for the security of the palace. His future was limitless. Chu Qingyan also planned to be a matchmaker for the two of them when everything settled down. After chatting and laughing, the entire palace became lively. At this time, Hua Xiao restrained the smile on her face and said seriously, "That's right, have you heard? It's about your family's ascension." "What do you mean?" Chu Qingyan also became serious. She knew that her good friend wouldn't bring up this matter for no reason. Hua Xiao sized her up and frowned. "It seems that you really don't know. That person in your family has really protected you too well. Now I'm in a dilemma. Should I tell you or not?" Chu Qingyan immediately raised her eyes and locked them on her good friend in front of her with a serious expression. She couldn't back down. "Since you've already spoken, there's no reason to stop halfway. Or do you not treat me as a friend?" Hua Xiao cursed in her heart. This person knew where her Achilles' heel was and specifically targeted the weak spot. This made her have no choice but to reveal everything. After telling her good friend everything, Hua Xiao immediately ran away. When she stood outside the palace, she couldn't help feeling emotional. Her good friend was becoming more and more dignified, becoming more and more like a mother of the world. She couldn't resist at all. She had already said what she shouldn't say. She thought of the cold face of Xiao Su and couldn't help shivering. "Mother, this miser, quickly save me." She disappeared like a wisp of smoke. Xiao and Zi watched the person disappear with a whoosh and couldn't help feeling emotional. The people the princess consort knew were not simple at all. After her good friend left, Chu Qingyan silently sat in her chair. It was unknown what she was thinking about. Where is His Highness right now? As soon as her voice fell, Jasper went out. After a while, she came back and reported with a bow, reporting to Master, His Highness is currently discussing matters with the ministers in the discussion pavilion. Chu Qingyan was silent for a bit before standing up. "Come, let's go to the discussion pavilion." Chapter 1474. When Chu Qingyan's group arrived in front of the discussion pavilion, the eunuch standing guard outside came forward to greet them. Who didn't know that this was the heart of the Lord inside? "Princess consort, why did you come here?" "The Lord is still discussing matters with the ministers." The eunuch kindly asked. "I have some business here, so I'll have to trouble Eunuch Li to report this." Chu Qingyan replied with a smile. Eunuch Li did not dare delay hearing this and quickly said, "This servant will go in and report this." Xiao Su was in the middle of discussing the reconstruction of the city with a few important ministers. When he heard the report, his eyes lit up and he put away the memorials in his hands. The ministers were all smart people. When they saw this, they immediately stood up and took their leave, saying that they would take these questions home to think about it and would reply tomorrow. Xiao Su nodded and everyone was instantly cleared out. When Chu Qingyan came in, he was the only one left in the discussion pavilion. "I've disturbed your work." As soon as she came in, Xiao Su immediately came forward to welcome her. He took her by the waist and led her to the dragon throne. Hearing this, he gave a soft laugh. This little fellow did not have any sincerity in her words at all. He placed her in the chair and raised his hand to pinch her cheeks. He said in a concerned voice, "What made you so impatient to see me?" Chu Qingyan looked at him. "You're still so calm right now, but you'll suffer later. Tell me the truth. Have you met with some trouble recently? If you dare hide it from me." She revealed a sly smile. "I'll take my baby out of the palace to avoid being an eyesore to you." Xiao Su's eyes slightly lit up. "You know?" "Humph, if I didn't accidentally find out, how long did you plan on hiding it from me?" Chu Qingyan angrily pointed at his nose and said. Xiao Su gave a low cough. "What matter are you referring to?" Chu Qingyan's eyes opened wide when she heard this. "You're saying that you're hiding more than one matter from me." Stinky ice cube, I can't live like this. Saying this, she stood up to leave. Xiao Su's long hand reached out and immediately pulled her into his embrace. He gently coaxed her. Alright, sorry, it's my fault. What do you want to know? I'll tell you, I won't hide it from you anymore. Ethereal's words were right. A pregnant woman was different from normal. Her temperament was very moody and she was easily sad. As her husband, he naturally had to accept it. Since you're so sincere, I'll forgive you. Speak, what is going on with the people's rumors? The imperial edict has already been issued. You are the rightful successor. How could it be false? Chu Qingyan snorted softly before she returned to the main topic. Xiao Su took the hot tea from the table and fed her a sip, before he slowly explained to her. Someone is spreading rumors that I'm leading the army to force the abdication, plotting to murder the emperor, and that I'm guilty of falsifying the imperial decree. Now the rumors are spreading in the capital city and the surrounding towns. But don't worry, I've already sent people to deal with it. Indeed, his good friend was right. Chu Qingyan frowned slightly as she pondered. Suddenly, she felt a warm finger gently touching her forehead, trying to dispel her worries. There's nothing to worry about. We'll deal with it as it comes. She pulled down his hand and held it in her palm, asking, Do you know who is stirring up the public opinion behind the scenes? We haven't found out yet, but it's very likely to be the remnants of the Fu family. Xiao Su played with her fingers as he spoke indifferently. Seeing his indifference, Chu Qingyan couldn't help but poke his chest. Why do you look like you're fine? Did I worry for nothing? Xiao Su chuckled. He rested his chin on top of her head and said in a gentle voice, Ian, do you think it's good to be the emperor of the world? Hearing his tone, which sounded like he was coaxing a child, Chu Qingyan snorted lightly. But she still caught the melancholy in his words. She lowered her eyebrows and thought carefully before saying, No. But, as if he had already expected her answer, Xiao Su continued, Sitting on top of the world, with the officials worshipping you and the people submitting to you. No one dares to object to your words. Isn't that good? Chu Qingyan wrinkled her nose and intertwined her fingers with his. With a serious tone, she said, What you said may seem good to many people, but there are pros and cons to everything. High and mighty people are lonely at the top. What you gain is equivalent to what you lose. Look at what happened to Sichuan Emperor in the end. But, at this point, she pouted. Look, you haven't become the emperor yet, but I'm already about to become a husband-gazing rock. Rather than this, I'd rather you be an idle lord. As soon as she finished speaking, she heard his chest vibrate. She couldn't stop her stifled laughter. She looked up and saw him trying to hold back his laughter. She instantly turned into a tigress. Good, you actually dare to laugh at me. As she spoke, she waved her hands to show him how fierce she was. Xiao Su caught her little fists and held her firmly in his arms, afraid that she would hurt him if she moved. Only then did he say, I'm not laughing at you. It's just that your husband deeply agrees with what my wife said. She was stunned. He stroked her black hair and rested his chin on top of her head again. He slowly said, You don't have to worry about the rumors. The reason why I haven't ascended the throne immediately is because I want to see what the person behind all of this wants to do. Luring the snake out of its hole is my plan. Because he was so honest, Chu Qingyan gradually quieted down and listened to him speak. Xiao Su smiled and didn't linger on this topic. Right now, this isn't the most important thing. Xiao Ran's troops disappeared overnight, as if they had evaporated into thin air. I planned to send someone to investigate. Since this little fellow cared so much about his matters, it was no longer a good idea to hide it from her. Rather than letting her hear it from someone else, he might as well take the initiative to tell her so that she wouldn't be too worried and affect the child in her womb. Xiao Ran? He has this kind of ability? Chu Qingyan was surprised. Consort Yu has probably already met up with him. The Moon Palace is also helping from the side. There are many people by his side that he can use. Xiao Su slowly said, his tone not very concerned. Chu Qingyan saw that he was as calm as jade and thought that everything should still be within his expectations. She sighed in relief, then asked, "Who do you plan to send to investigate?" Xiao Su's fingers paused, then he tilted his head and looked at her with a smile. "Do you have any good suggestions?" Chu Qingyan heard him and thought carefully. Suddenly, the figure of a thin and gentle man flashed across her mind. Her eyes lit up. "Prince Irua?" Xiao Su nodded. "He's a good candidate. Not only is he a literary talent, but he's also a military talent. In the past, he pretended to be sick and hid his abilities. If we let him do nothing now, it would really bury his talents." She shook her head. "That's not the only reason. When I returned to the palace this time, I saw something wrong with Prince I. How should I put it?" She racked her brains for words to describe it. Finally, she had a flash of inspiration. "It seems like he has nothing left to live for. Although it's not a good way to describe it, I'm a little worried. After all, he's Zijing's sweetheart. Should we tell him about Pang Zijing?" Xiao Su said, deep in thought. "You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure."